Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Dena show. And if you're watching us for the first time, welcome. If you are a regular viewer, and welcome too. Today is obviously a special day. We have.
If you are a regular viewer, and welcome to.
Today is. Well, I'm getting an echo feedback.
We have.
Hold on a second, guys. I'm getting some feedback, and I'm not sure why. Bear with me, please.
Hold on a second, guys. I'm getting some feedback, and I'm not sure why.
Hold on a second. Technical difficulty. Oh, there we are. It's gone now. Hi Eben, hi Nancy, hi Kwame, Minta, how are you? Please, if you are watching, make sure that you share your page. Let me see you share that page, because I can see everybody who doesn't share their page. So if you are watching us from Facebook, please share your page. Do a watch party. Get everybody to watch and be here. You're waiting for Mr. Al-Wahab, really? Okay. He is in the background. He's also eagerly waiting to come on. Have you shared your page? Are you doing a watch party? Make sure that you invite your friends and family to watch also. Today's Father's Day. If you are watching, happy Father's Day to all the extraordinary men who support the women, who look after their children, and who just, are there for us each and every time. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to my daddy. Happy Father's Day to my husband. And even happy Father's Day to Al-Wahab, who is watching as well and waiting to come on. And, before I start, I need to make sure that, I do my shout outs. And that's to Cassie's Classics. Guys, she is doing shito seasoning and, all-purpose seasoning, jollof seasoning. Make sure that you go on her page and order from her. So, she's a young Ghanaian that's doing amazing things. This is her website. Make sure that you go on and order this amazing products that she's doing in the USA. She's based in Atlanta, but she ships worldwide. And I've got mine. I used her seasoning for my jollof rice. Absolutely fantastic, beautiful. And then also Vesta London Beauty, her lip gloss, which I've got on at the moment. This is called Sweet One, but you can go on and also order something from her online store. She's got, normal glaze, whatever. She's got it all on there, so you can go and purchase that also. So today's topic, first of all, I want to see where you guys are watching me from. Which country are you in? Where are you watching me from, so that I know? I really want to see if it's Ghana, if it's Nigeria, where are you watching me from today? Please make sure, like I said, that you share your pages. If you are watching us from YouTube, make sure that you click the subscribe button and you share it. With YouTube, you can share on Twitter, you can share on Facebook, you can share on LinkedIn, all sorts of places. Okay, I've got Canada. Ya's watching us from Canada. Hi, Ya. Hope you're well. Isaac is watching us from Kent. Hi. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I don't know whether you're a father, but happy Father's Day. Oh, Brace is watching us from Japan. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Where else? Where are we? Ghana, Bafour. Hi, Bafour. He's watching us from Ghana. Please, guys, make sure that you share your pages whilst we are Bangkok, Ghana. Okay, Hamburg in Germany. Right. I'm very, very excited that you guys are on today and watching. And also, guys, if you haven't already signed up for the ODANA Connect. ODANA Connect is a platform which is going to connect all Africans together if you're looking for investment opportunities, if you're also looking to invest in something, if you want job opportunities, you can just go on there. So this is the website, ODANA Connect. Sign up right now so that we can keep you updated with everything that's happening, so that we can all connect around the globe. This is a huge platform which we're going to officially launch in September, but this is the time that you can register if you are looking to invest in Africa. This is the platform that you need to log on to. Okay, I've got somebody watching from London. Fantastic. Have you shared your page? I want to make sure that you guys are sharing your page. And I want to say a big thank you to Tap Tap Send. Tap send. If you haven't already downloaded the app, you can do so. And what you do is, as soon as you download it, you can use the promo code, which is Dena, and you can get £5 extra to send to a loved one. So make sure that you download the app right now as we are speaking. Guys, I need you to share your pages. Oh, California, yes, LA. Who else? Where are you? Okay, we've got Ghana. Yes, more Ghana. Angola, fantastic. Yes, go to odanaconnect.com and make sure that you subscribe. This is the time that, you know, if you're looking for opportunities in Africa, if you want to invest in agriculture, if you're just looking for job opportunities, if you're looking to partner with people, this is the time that you can literally go on and register. I'm going to put the website details for you on the comments box so that you can see. And then you can basically subscribe to it today. I'm gonna introduce my guests. I've interviewed him before, and he's a very special person to me. He knows it, and he's doing a lot for Ghana. You know, there's people that do a lot of things, but sometimes you don't really, even though he's very well known, but still, I feel like he's done so much that he needs more recognition that he gets. The knowledge that he has, for me, he should be in certain positions in Ghana, but it hasn't happened. Maybe it's because he doesn't want to do certain things, but I feel like he's doing so much knowledge to impart on us, for us to learn so much from. He talks about the youth, he talks about youth empowerment, he talks about investment opportunities. I mean, he's just a great person. And I'm gonna put his picture up, right? So that you know exactly who I'm talking about. Let's see. This is the man. This is the man. And, you know, Al-Wahab, Farooq Al-Wahab is an international diplomatic investment consultant. So if you're, I mean, you know, I've just spoken about investment, but if you are looking to do investment in Ghana, he is another person that you can really go to. He has over 30 years. It's not like me, Dena, that I've had, you know, a few years doing this, but over 30 years in corporate and diplomacy leadership experience. He's worked with diplomatic missions, NGOs, international disasters, and aid management services. He's also the policy advisor of the African Union Diaspora Forum. His specialized field is to advise and recommend governments and foreign ministries to establish honorary and general consulate. And, you know, I mean, the list goes on, but I'm going to get him to come on the show now and just, you know, speak to us and impart knowledge on us. Please welcome the one and only Farooq Al-Wahab. Hi, Farooq.
Hadia, how are you?
Thank you. Yes, and you know, Farooq calls me Hadia. He doesn't call me Hadia. Since he met me, that's the name, and I like it as well. I love it. I love it. Farooq, happy Father's Day.
Thank you very much, Lenta.
Did you manage to celebrate Father's Day at all today?
Well, I mean, Africans' Father's Day is just very regular. We just only got wishes here or there, which is okay. But anything special, you don't get it. No gift, nothing. It's just only maybe a small text message, but highly appreciated. Any bit of it is very okay.
Absolutely. But I mean, Farooq, when we talk about Father's Day, Mother's Day, do you think that we over kind of celebrate our mothers more than our fathers?
Well, I think it should have been in a way that the spiritual understanding has it that man was created first. That is Adam before Eve. Therefore, if it's about celebration of the two personalities, I think Father's Day should have been very. I don't know who actually invoked or who brought about the Father's Day, but indeed, you and I know, and the world is aware that Father's Day, a lot of mothers today, they've forgotten. Wives have forgotten their husbands, that today is their Father's Day. But then when it comes to an issue of a Mother's Day, I think if even you are sleeping, your wife, your sister, They wake you up that won't you wish me? But then when it gets to their turn, oh, sorry, I've forgotten. So unfortunately, we can call it maybe it's biblical or the Quranic, but then we accept it as a normal norm. Women just always to assume, they like to assume the role, as they call it, ladies first and women's first. Is that not it? But when it comes to maybe paying school fees, then a man's first. When it's about bills, man comes first. In some circumstances, it's quite arguable, but then in most cases, that is the case. We accept you as queens. So let's take it like that.
But Farooq, I think the narrative is changing. I feel like a lot more people are celebrating Father's Day and are not forgetting. I know it's probably, like you said, the impact of the woman. Maybe it's because the woman, you know, we're the ones that nurture the children in our womb. Maybe that's why we get special, you know, recognition on Mother's Day rather than our dads.
Actually, that one is quite also arguable, because I would also say that you nurture them. Who gives you the baby? The baby must come from somebody else. So you would also go back to ask yourself, who gave you the baby to nurture? So that is also very important. But then one says that, well, we carry the baby in our womb for 9 months. Out of that, yes, we give you that credit. We don't argue about that. But I'm saying that Mother's Day compared to Father's Day, in fact, the disparities or the gap is just simply too wide. The narratives, as you said, is being changed. It should be better than it used to be before. It used to be, because, in fact, a lot of fathers have been forgotten. Not that they didn't do well. Good number of them did well, and they are still doing well. But recognition is low-keyed, low-felt, because of the woman's dominance when it comes to celebration. So we do just only agree and admit, and we allow you to play that role. Kudos to mothers. We are fathers. We continue.
Angela says, could it not be that mothers still feel undervalued and underappreciated by the man?
But it's not so. Depending. That one also, the narratives have changed. Let us not forget that certain traditions and also certain culture actually is what maybe she might be talking about, undervalued or underappreciated. It has to do with certain kind of maybe even religious bodies, X, Y, Z, some families, some clans, some tribes. But in general, women are not being undervalued and they are not even underappreciated. It is not the case. But the case is that it depends which family or which man or who that we are talking about. Some men, indeed, yes. Some are very oppressive. Some are very disrespectful. Some are very, the whole irresponsible. We do understand. But greatly, I don't think men are doing all that bad as compared to how women portray their Mother's Day. Look, all over in Ghana, if not COVID, you would see during Mother's Day, there are celebrations all over. Every mother has a very new dress. Even those who wore, those times they call it mook, a very high heel. In their 70s, they will still try to wear it up. But if there had been ever any Father's Day bash, there's nothing. And if you should see it, come and look at the jeans, which a 90-year-old man is being put in. It's agile, it's very, it's a bit uncomfortable, but it's okay.
Yeah, but I also feel like, probably us women spend more time with the children. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the dads. It depends on the relationship that, one has with their father or their mother in for them to really celebrate them,
Yeah, well, that also is part of it. But then you should also talk about profession. If you are talking about, we should not restrict ourselves to only to, let's say, in Africa or countries or places. But if you look at Europe, the mother gives birth, the wife gives birth. After 2 weeks, 3 weeks, she's going to work. We run shifts. Men are taking care. They are changing diapers. They are changing pampers. They feed the kids. They drive them to school, etc. So you look at where the people are, and then also the proficiency, the profession in which they find themselves in. It also plays a role. It is not always the static rule where women are all the time at the forefront, they are taking care. No, I can tell you that good number of fathers in the Western world, including the UK, even though I'm told, and I do know that in UK, they are very irresponsible fathers out there. I'm sorry for the guys in UK, but good number of them are like that, unfortunately. But other parts, America, Canada, etc., some fathers are really doing good. They run shift with their wives and take care of 3, 4, 5 kids. So when it comes to women spending more time with the kids. I strongly disagree. I said, depend on the family. When you come back to other African, in Africa, in our country or other parts of Africa, the family settings, there's household. There are a lot of people at home. The women want to assume the role. If even a man comes closer, it becomes a more or less a taboo. How does a man come and bath a child, whereas the mother, the aunt, the sisters, everybody is there? So if you look at that in that composition, then you realize that it is not our making, but rather there are so many people out there who contribute, or the resources to take care of them, not financial, but the human resources to take care of the kids are in abundance. So how would the man, in this case, it allows the woman to also take position. But if you refer to Europe, you refer to elsewhere in other parts of the world, that is not the way it is. People, men, only very few of them, they just neglect and reject and allow their kids all on the. You can't even do that. The law even forbids you from doing that. Therefore, you cannot. Look at in Africa, where a father maybe will just reject the kid. 5 years, he wouldn't like to see the kid, whichever way that it is. But in Europe, or any other part of the world where laws, regulations, institutions are working, you cannot do that. You have the law to pick the kids, walk them to the park, play with them, pick them from school, drop them, etc. It is a law. Unfortunately, we don't have that law. So you see it business as usual. Well, it's you and your mother. You understand? Tradition had played a kind of a negative role. However, it is what it is. But then when you look at the Western world, that is not how it is. So we all learning. And even in Ghana right now, let me not call it the middle class. When you go to their homes, it's the same way. They're taking care of their kids. They send the kids, go to KFC or any other, these local restaurants or even the Western restaurants. You see father bringing their kids to watch films, etc. Unlike, so let us not talk about also the timing. The time then, your father's time, my father's time, their father's time, it is different from today because the lifestyle was not the same. The lifestyle was the same. Yes, that is the reason.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many, like you said, some negative images of what some men are doing in Africa, and so it makes it quite difficult for women to celebrate the man as as we celebrate the woman. I know you mentioned that yes, who gives the baby, but at the same time, when a baby is in your womb for 9 months, you guys don't know how that feels.
That one, I would say that you will refer back who created humanity. That one would be a question for His Almighty Allah to answer why He did it that way. God would also answer why the men were given the eggs, and to give you have the eggs, but then somebody has to fertilize the eggs. It has two sides of it. It is not about how long you labored the child, how many months you carry the child. It is true. Don't forget that men also go through the same trauma, unless maybe, once again, a heartless man. When your wife is pregnant, you see her with a heavy load. A man may not show his feelings that he feels for you, but then the same feelings, the same whatever that you're going through, indirectly. But we try to hold and we try to contain any kind of a pressure. You do not see it. Of course, women would like even to see you when she's crying, you also cry. Unfortunately, we will not cry, but then we share the suffering with you. So it is not always correct that you've carried or you labored a baby for 9 months, and for that matter, no, it is not. Because when the child is born, the child comes to the world. The first bill, again, is arguable. Who is the father, the type of the father, the kind of father? Let's play the econometric side of it out. But then in most cases, the man takes control regardless of what situation, economic situation, financial situation the woman had been in or was in. Men always try their best to take care of their wives. Not all, but then greater number of men, they do well. Let us not forget one thing, Adenta. You look at when a child goes through all this, 9 months labor, giving birth, the child has to start walking 1 year, 2 years, the child starts school. You can do your research. I know you are a very strong journalist, you are a very strong media person, do an in-depth, let me call it, check around. Are you getting me?
Yeah.
You find out that about 90% of children, their first school fees certainly was paid by their dad, regardless of what happens in the end. But then I'm looking at back to back. If the father paid the first school fees of the child, the effect of it is not different from you, the mother, who felt that you pay the last graduation fee of your child, because at that time you feel that, well, I pay for the university. That is not the beginning. The beginning, look at who also paid for the class one. So if you have the energy when the man is tired and weak, lost job or old, pensioned, but you are actively working, if you pay the graduation fee of your child, the effect is not different from the man who also put the child first day in school. We don't look at it from that angle. That is where the woman politics, and then also a kind of politics of a woman comes into play. That at that time she tried to infuse, bring the idea, try to let the child know, because that is when the child is matured. Whatever happened in the childhood, the child is not in the known. And that is what I'm saying, that when the child comes of age to understand and to know, you should not be looking at, because you were born when your father was already 35. What does it mean? By the time you get 35, your father is already 70. So a lot of things have gone past. So you wouldn't know what your father has done the past 35 years ago. You are only seeing when your mother took over, but when your father was in control, the child wouldn't know. Therefore, it makes it easier for the woman to wrongly adjust the kids, because that is their adult years, their teenager from teenage age, from 16 years, from 15, they start seeing. But if you look at it from African point of view, or the kind of the marriage age gap, you realize that by the time the last born is even about 15, the man is somewhere hovering around 80 years. So what does a 15-year-old child who know what the father had done with the first, second, third child already? You understand? And let us not also forget about this. Some of the fathers, or like the mothers, they're having 5 kids. The last one will not see much of the father, depending on the age, because the father has gone pension 5 years, 10 years, 20 years before that child comes of age. So that time, maybe, even though the empire left behind, the man's money or the man's whatever that he received is what the mother is using. But because he had already reverted, because he has already sat back and allowed the mother to take control, in most cases, if the mother happens to be one of those, you understand, she will not give the impression that I'm taking over, or the father has given me the baton or the mantle to take care of this, but she rather adjusts that it is me. And that kind of alignment, that is where we have the misconnection. That is where we have the Mother's Day celebration big. And if you listen to the airwaves on Mother's Day, before 3, 4, 5 days before Mother's Day, on the airway, oh God of mercy, especially the boys, when you see how they eulogize, how they talk, wow, the praises, they shower on their mother, it makes as if there's no father living. That is what they came to see, but they've not seen what the father has done before. I'm not saying that all fathers do the same, but generally, a good number of them, they start very well, they do very well, but when they are also getting to the disarmament age, retiring and getting weaker, that is where the problem comes. Look at one funny thing on the flip side, anyway, the public audio. On the flip side, a man becomes old, around 65, 70. Some of them are still strong, active. I'm talking about active. That's what sexually active. Woman gets 60 years, sometimes she's sexually disarmed, or she's not interested anymore. She feels extremely super jealous, as I told you of today, during our conversation. At that time, the woman takes advantage in most cases, trying to always feed the kids, not the very adult ones, feed the kids. What the father hasn't done is jealousy, because the man's potency or his activation is very high. The woman start now polluting the kids. I'm not all women, but most of them also, they do. Polluting the kids. Your father did this. Your father did that. The inefficiencies all start coming out. The mother feeding the kids. That infusion is what makes some of us, some of you, some of them out there forget and feel and see their fathers as hopeless father. You understand? Because, like I said, every man will never, no matter how, show his child, who the mother's boyfriend or former boyfriend was. No man will do that, no matter how. But the easiest thing, comfort that a woman knows how to play. Are you getting me? That is your father's girlfriend. That was your father's girlfriend. The one even they had in school. I remember my grandmother at the age of 85 was still showing me my grandfather's girlfriend.
Wow.
You understand me? So with this, you see your grandfather as a horrible man, but it is needless exercise on part of a woman. With this, I'm trying to say that much as not all of us do the same, not much as not all men. Some start well, they end up bad. Some start bad, they end up well. These are things that you can only ask God why it is like that. However, when we get to that situation, let us all jojo. You understand? If even you have nothing good to talk about the man, well, the kids should be left aside. Leave them out of the equation and try. You understand me? Because good number of children, especially those in the diaspora, abroad, those who have traveled, they hate their father more than any other thing. When the son or the daughter abroad sends money to the father, the woman is the first person to collect the money. But when the daughter or the son sends to the mother, the man will not see it. All these things are things that are being done because the woman's projections and how they portray themselves that they are the ones who have been good. In any case, it's not always the case, but most of the times, that is what we go through. And I've said that these are things that gradually lead men into what? Depression, frustration, and then we die so early. It's part of it.
I think it's about the men playing their part also, Farooq. I feel like, look, if you have a good relationship with your child, okay, they will celebrate you. Today I celebrated my dad, I celebrated my husband. It's because we have that bond. But if you're a father who is not close to their child, you know, have not seen them for so many years, and then you expect them on Father's Day to celebrate you, this will not happen. And I think that, you know, the narrative is changing. We're seeing more and more women celebrating the men. And even today on social media, I saw a flood. Yes, it's probably not the same as the man, but I think the woman, but I think that it is growing. But I think the men need to play a bigger part as well, because, you know, for them to have that level of you know, for women to show them that gratitude and their children to show them that gratitude, they need to be seen to be doing something. Okay, if you're not part of your child's life, paying school fees and giving your wife money or whatever doesn't mean anything if you are not part of the child's development, if you're not talking to your child, you know, so it won't mean anything to them. Sometimes it's about bonding with your child. And that's why I say that, you know, when we are carrying our child, I mean, God made us all different. We have a certain bond with our child. Like the way I would feel like, oh, my son right now is in Ghana with my husband, okay? And I haven't seen it. Like my heart is like beating faster probably than my husband if he was to have left that child. There's a certain bondage that we have with our children. And so I feel like women will always be celebrated more than the men. I don't see it changing. But I think that, you know, yes, more and more men are being celebrated, but I feel like the women will still be on top. But anyway, this was just by the way. Happy Father's Day to all.
Conclusively, women like occasions.
We do like occasions, and we like to celebrate the occasions.
Anyway.
But, you know, this was just by the way. I mean, it's a whole nother topic. You know, thank you so much for joining me. I see that Tiffany's also on. And, you know, today's topic is, are we our own worst enemies? We're looking at racism. We're looking at discrimination. I think I'll bring on Tiffany now. So, guys, please welcome Tiffany, my sister from another mother.
Hey, what's up, sis? Good to see you. Happy Father's Day to everyone.
Yes, Al-Wahab, please meet Tiffany.
Tiffany, hi. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Great.
Tiffany is the director of NAACP the Youth and College Division. Sis, tell us a little bit about your role before we talk about the topic.
Sure. So I've been working at the NAACP for a little over 2 years now. My job is really specific on the national level. I serve and work with over 300 chapters of Black people who are under the age of 25 years old across the country in really 3 basic areas: leadership development, training and campaign organizing, and then making sure that all of our folks have strong chapters across the country so we can foster the strength that we need in our communities to make real change.
Okay, fantastic. And, you know, I'm going to dive in because I know you're also celebrating your Father's Day with your daddy.
I am. We're with family. People have to be with family today.
So, sis, I mean, you know, looking at this topic, are we our own worst enemy? And what is the difference between racism and discrimination?
So, first of all, no, we are not our own worst enemy. Never have been, never will be. We might have disagreements. There might be things that we don't understand quite yet. There might be cultural shifts that we need to make. There might be new ways in which we can imagine how family structures work, how education works, and how injustices work, and what the strategies are to get to those goals might be different. But we are not our own worst enemy. There is only one clear enemy in this situation, and it is not Black people on Black people. The difference between racism and discrimination, if folks have not read yet, you know what, I should have grabbed it before I got on the camera. There is a book called Race by Howard Zinn that folks need to check out. It's a very important book that unpacks and talks about racism and race as social constructs for economic gain in capitalism. And when we talk about race and we talk about discrimination, there is a very significant difference that folks need to pay attention to when we talk about the constructions of race, where it came from, why it exists, and how it is used to uphold, and especially here in the States, systems of economic and social depression and oppression, right? When we talk about discrimination, that exists across the board. Discrimination is, you don't like somebody because of the way that they use their English. You don't like somebody because of the way that they identify, depending on who they love. There is a way that you discriminate folks based off of religion. But there is no racism, I think, between Black folks and Black folks, because racism, again, is tied to an economic structure and economic oppression. And when we talk about racism, that's usually talking about white supremacy and white supremacy's impact on the global experience of people of color, but also, like I said, the economic gains that they've been able to get because of racism. So it's very different. And no, we are not our own worst enemy. Absolutely not.
Okay. Farooq, what do you feel about that?
I think it's a very complex subject, which I would like Tiffany to understand that racism comes out from race. How many race or human race that would you have on earth? We must understand the context and the content of a race. I do not want to understand and explain racism from the activist point of view, but then we look at it with the natural or the naked understanding of a race. What is a race? And I'm referring to human race. The human race, we're talking about particularly with color. The human race, what are they and where are they? We have a Black man, either African American Black or Black African. That Black is one race. We have white race. We have the Asian, that is also a race. And then we have also the Indian, the native Indian American, that was also a race and it's still an existing race. And then we have the Hawaiian race with the Papua. And the Papua, I'm referring to the South Pacific. They also have a kind of race. We call them the Australiasoids. The Australoids comes with the Aborigines, with the Papuans. They are also seen as one race. But if you define it in that context, you will get about 5 of races in the world in terms of the color settings. The Black, the white, that is the European white. And even within Europe, not all Europeans are white. So the whites are seen as one race, Black one race, the Asian, and then the Hawaiian Aborigines and then the Red Indians. These are the 5. So when we listen to or we hear the word racism, it is not a negative word. Racism, it is not a negative word. Racism is ideology, beliefs, understanding, worshiping of a certain race. To them, among themselves, they don't see it. When you look at the context of I'm using my race, that is my color, I'm being racist, well, that one is a negative. When certain people are protecting their race, I'm not referring to, we get to the criminal aspect when somebody does something against something. There's a nice background. We should not look at it in the context of bad thing that somebody has done. That one is a criminal injustice, etc. But when we are talking about protection of race, let's say the Red Indians, they see themselves as one. They wanted to protect their race from being abused, from being killed, from being done this or that. But then in a modern world, where we are looking at, when you hear the word racism, then from activist point of view, a black man against white or white against black. That is the point I'm trying to say, that is not the act of racism. Because the races are there. You did not create the race, I did not create the race. But if you look at even where we will go in later, the Americans, it is not, let's say, the racism of a black man and a white American. Let us not forget that the America has existed and it was there with people on that land. In the 14th century, the 1492, before a white man from Europe had gone to the Americans, there were people living there who were native Indians. It was one race in the 14th century. When in the 16th century, when slave trade had taken place, that is when a black man had gone there. The Europeans brought a black man there. But there had been a race, which was the European, the white. And there had been a race, which was the Indian. There was a race, which was what? The Asian. And then there was a race, which was the Hawaiian and the Papuans. So if you look at it from that angle, it will tell you that those who had gone to the Americans were not even the European whites, the British, etc. It was the Spaniards, the Spanish. They had gone first to the land of the Americans. When the Spanish had gone there, look at the color of the Spaniards. The Spaniards, when they went there, you can talk about the Florida and then the Carolinas. The Floridas and the Carolinas, that is the Cuba area. What happened? Slave trade brought a black man. But let's look at it today. Until when the Native Americans who owned the land were allowed to take citizenship of the land which was theirs. Until 1942, already black man was a citizen of the United States, if we put it in that context. But let's come back to Europe so that we understand the race. Europe had a race, and the European races, we have what? The whites. Who are the whites of Europe? Not every European is a white, no. You have the Nordic, the Nordic, Norway, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and then Iceland, the 5. You have the Germans, is white, the English, the Irish, the Scottish. And then when you come to Middle Europe, then you see the French, then you see also the Belgians, you see the Austrians, you see the Bulgarians, you see the Slovaks, you see the Czechs, you see the Polish, they are whites. And then when you go to the Balkans, Bulgaria is a white. When you go back to also the Balkans, Albanians, they are white Europeans. Then when you go to the other side, it is the white, but they were the Persians. And the Persians, we have the Pakistanians, who you see them as whites, but they are also seen as Asian race because they are from also different ethnic background. So we should also be looking at where we have the race, which is black, then we have the ethnicity, and then we have the tribal, then we come to the clans. But in Europe, you look at it, The Middle Europeans, let's take a country like Italy as a typical case scenario. Italians, everybody, you and I being black, you see Italians are white. It is not how Italians see themselves. The Italians don't see themselves as all white, but then the mid-half of Italy up to the northern Europe, which is up to Austria, they see themselves as Italian white. So racism, if we put it in that context, there was a protection of a race of Italian whites against the black Italian whites, who are the black color-skinned Italian whites. They are from the mid-central of Italy up to the ocean of the Mediterranean, to the Sicily, etc. And look at this interesting thing. When the Europeans, the first colored people to have gone to Europe outside the white Europeans were the Indians. And it dates back in 8th century, the 10th century, when the Indians from the Punjab have gone, we call them the Punjabis. They went to Europe. And when they went to Europe, they had gone to trade. And when they were in Europe, they were mistakenly taken as Egyptians. So there were the tribes called the Roma and the Romani. So today, if you bring a country like Romania, which had also tribal settings like today, myself, yourself, Africans, etc., we should not be confused with mentioning or explaining the ethnic background, the tribal background, and the clan, but let us concentrate on the race. If it is a race, then I'm saying that the white race have killed themselves more than a black to have killed black. Let's get that one clear. And the understanding is that till today, the biggest white race, ethnic background, the biggest in Europe, the biggest tribal setting in Europe, from the 16th century till today, they have no country. Who are they? The Gypsies, they are not blacks. The Sigourners, they are not blacks. The Gypsies till today are homeless. They don't have a country. They are not attached to any country. Where are they? What color are they? They are seen as white race. Where are they from? They have not been designated to any country. So Europe, when it came to the First World War, the Second World War, they also went through what was called ethnic cleansing. They were killing what? Certain tribal settings. They were killing a certain kind of group. That is why one would say that the Nazis, Germans, it is not the German being racist, but the Nazis was a form of government that was perpetuating what is called ethnic cleansing. So they were killing tribes. And what was the tribe? They didn't want the Polish tribe. So they were killing Polish. And that time, in the 19th century, 1911, the First World War, the Second World War, there was no black man in Europe. At that time, there was only whites. So if racism in that context is defined that it's a black against white, which some of us are made to believe, which is not the case, it is the definition and the political icing that has turned out to be like this. The American case is a different case. We'll deal with it. That has to do with their constitution. That has to do with the laws, which I will share with Tiffany. That has to do with the oppression system that has been as a result of what? A political form. But to talk about a racism, the whites have protected their race. The Indians till today protecting their race. The biggest ethnic background of the whole world is the Chinese Han family, which is also seen as an Asian race. They made sure they protect themselves. Japanese is part of the Asian race, but the Japanese are seen as what? Also a tribal or ethnic background. So if we have to confuse the ethnicity, we define race in a form of activism. I'm trying to say that the Egyptian, the Israelis or the Israelites, they are whites. They are part and parcel of the white race. But during the First and the Second World War, when the experimental and extermination, the killing of the Jewish, I'm sorry, the Jewish were not blacks. Who were killing whites? It was white killing white. Who was killing Polish? The Polish as a country was double, 2 times wiped from the European calendar or European map. Who were killing them? They were what? What happened in Auschwitz, in Poland, the Holocaust, the Cold War? All these things were not something that was a white man, white European against an African or against a black man. It was a white man against white man. That was the reason why when Europe sat after the Cold War, after the First War, after the Second World War, etc., they broke down the frontiers of the ethnicity. They broke down the frontiers of the what? Of the tribes. The only country in Europe till today that are left with the tribes is the Romania. That has over 12 tribes existing till today. The Dacia, the Abosins, and then a whole lot of them that for purpose of time we cannot mention. But when you come to Germany, you see them Germans as Germans. There's no tribe. When you come to France, it is not the racism as you see it in a political activity sense. That one has to do with constitution, the laws, etc. But France is a white-dominated country. So distinctively, blacks in Europe, we all went there. The continent, Europe, had no black. So we will say that we are distinctive minority that are there. But when you go also back to the Americans, I'm saying that the subject racism or the subject a race, the race was there before a black man had gone to the United States of America. Not the other way around, that it is perceived or it is seen that in America, black man had gone there before the Indians, before the Hawaiians, before even the Spaniards. No. So these races were whitewashed. They severed them in a very bad way, which we don't want to talk about it. But who were the people? The British went. And it's not only the British, the Irish, the Scottish, the Wales, they went there. All Europeans, white race, went to America to seek for greener pastures. There was wealth on that land. And when they had gone there, the same thing like in Canada, the land Canada belonged to the Red Indians. Where are the Red Indians today? Where are the Red Indians today? You don't see them. Very few of them are there. What happened to them? They made sure they cried them off. So political criminality, lapse and weakness of constitution, which in this world, why people are looking at a race as a big subject in the United States is the fact that America is seeing herself as the police of the world. So if you are the police of the world, we expect more than what is happening out there. In that matter, one is talking about racism. But then racism, I'm saying that people or races, certain color have protected their race. Back to the Indian race.
Are you saying that black people are being racist amongst each other, or what are you?
I will get there. We the blacks, the way you see the Indians, they are together. India, Red India, Roma, that is called, we call it the olden days, the ancient, the 8th century. The Indians trying to protect their race. So they are practicing racism, not negative, but if an Indian accuses me because I'm black, I'm an African, he would not give me a job, he will do this to me, that Indian had been a racist or practicing racial discrimination or racial act. But if you look at it from the point of racism, it is not different from a certain word. Let's just look at the naked meaning. What is capitalism? It is the belief and the worship, understanding, recognition of capitalist system of governance. What is socialism? It is the practice of social, etc., etc. What is communism? To you and to me and to others who didn't understand, everybody took communism as what? A negative word. What about Pan-Africanism? Pan-Africanism, it is a belief, doctrine, ideology, and having faith in being an African. But if you become a strict Pan-Africanist and using your Pan-Africanism against a white man, against an Indian, against a Chinese, then you are also being a Pan-Africanist. So the difference is there is no difference between being a Pan-Africanist in a strict sense, meaning that I'm an African, anything from Asia, anything from Chinese. But Pan-Africanism is a doctrine, is an understanding, it is the worship of what? The African ideology, African identity. That is how the race. But the definition of racism in the context of the wars, the Europe tribes, they had tribes. When all this thing came to pass, then in the 14th century, 16th century, there was what? Call it the slave trade. the Slave Trade Act, the abolishment in the 18th century thereabout, the abolishment was passed by the what? The same British, who were the whites in America. At that time, the world does not talk, and we are not talking about red Indians who are already occupying the American land. But today, fortunately, we have our brothers and sisters. But I'm saying that we, the blacks of the world, African blacks, the Pacific, South Pacific blacks, we have not put ourselves together, united together enough, as how the European whites, and I've defined and I've said that among the European whites, not all of them are seeing themselves as whites, because when even you take a country like France, which is a white race, going to the southern part of France to the southern part, the northern part of Spain, they are seen as what? They are seen as black or colored people, even though they are French, because they are close to Spain, because they are close to Andorra. When you get to Spain itself, the northern Spanish, which are called the Moors, these Moors are seen as Spanish whites. But when you go to Gran Canaria, who are seen as Mediterranean, Moroccans, and then also the dark skin or the color skin of what? Of the Spaniards. They have also faced a racial discrimination, racial attacks, or whichever way that we see it. So I'm trying to say that in general, we should not square the understanding that whenever we mention race, it is between a black and then a white. Take it, for instance, Ms. Denta, for your purpose and for the purpose of the public listening. We have a black race. We have black people in West Papua, and West Papua is in the South Pacific Ocean of Australia. Which are the countries that are there? How many of us are aware? We have the Polynesia, the Micronesia, we have the Solomon Island, we have the Nauru, the Vanuatu, are you getting me? The Fiji, Papua Guinea, and all that. We have a country that is black, called the West Papuan, the biggest island in the South Ocean. Over 2.5 million people, Africans, descendants, black. Do you know what is happening to them? Who and where has any African government woke up to speak about that subject? The people are still to today, as we speak, 2020, under slavery. They haven't been liberated. They have no passport. They have no government. They have no community, nothing. They are all in the bush, over 2.5 million. The leader, the activist, is in UK, Benewenda. Google Benewenda and look at what is happening to West Papua. All the West Papuans are caged. The men and women arrested are being guided by pythons, snakes that are guiding them already in prison. What have we done? I'm saying that maybe Indian race wouldn't allow that to happen to themselves. The Persians.
Are you saying that we as the black race have allowed that to happen?
We have allowed that to happen, and I will get in there and go into the mother of the black race, which is the African continent. The connectivity, how the Asian race had the ethnicity, the Japanese.
I want Tiffany to also, because she's not spending a lot of time with us, to talk about, Tiff, from your perspective, and working, you've got a passion to fight against, racial injustice, and that's what you do. You've seen you on social media fighting for this. Do you think there's a difference between systematic racism and racism?
I don't think that's a great question. I don't think that racism means anything without the systems that uphold it and keep it in place. So when I visit a middle school in Jackson, Mississippi, and the young black kids that go to that school don't have access to any of their school books on the first day of class. They don't have any chalk. They don't have their schedules for what school looks like. Their teachers are severely underpaid. Our lowest paid teachers are in Jackson, Mississippi, which is predominantly black. And then I traveled to Brooklyn, New York, where the highest paid teachers are paid. They are paid up to $75,000 a year compared to $28,000 a year that teachers in Mississippi are paid. When the audience is different and they're able to actually get their school books, they're able to have all the school supplies that they need. The teachers don't have to spend their own personal money to pay for school supplies and to prepare for their classroom. There is systematic racism. When black families can't get proper testing, even for COVID-19 and the pandemic we're in right now, because of pre-existing health conditions, because of where they might live, et cetera. That's where we see systematic racism show up. Even in the case, I'm about to drive on Wednesday to Kentucky from Washington, D.C., because there's a giant protest happening in the name of Breonna Taylor, who folks may or may not know was murdered and killed while she was sleeping, her 26-year-old Black woman who was sleeping with her partner in bed. And in Kentucky, a no-knock warrant happened where police officers did not announce themselves or knock on the door, but busted into the house and began shooting because her partner, who was scared that somebody had broken into the house, was shooting back. And so when we look at that type of case, and the officers have been fired, but they have not been arrested, right? The injustice that we see in the systematic parts of racism exist all over this country in America. They exist in education. They exist in health disparities. They exist in the police. That is why you have seen a national outcry for Black Lives Matter, because we're talking about how the systematic oppression against race, and I want to name also this because there's a confusion, I think, for some people, that ethnicity and race and racism are all three different words for a reason. And there's different definitions for all of them. And so my ethnicity would be American, right? My race would be Black. How I identify my race here in the States would be African-American, technically. I identify as a Black person, right? And so when we think about the systematic oppression between races here in this country, and the housing crisis, and how certain Black families are able to get things and how rich families are not able to get certain things that are white in predominantly white areas, all of those things are connected. I don't think that we can look at the systems of oppression, whether it be economic or whether it be class, without talking about how it disenfranchises certain communities of color. We just saw here in the States 2 or 3 days ago, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of supporting DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which are undocumented students, undocumented people here in the country who Donald Trump said he didn't want them to be in this country anymore. He didn't want them to have access to education. He didn't want them to have access to schooling, funding, et cetera. And the NAACP, my organization, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, we sued Donald Trump on the federal level and won that court case 2 days ago. Right? Wow. So now folks who are undocumented, who are all people of color, by the way, now have access to be able to continue their education, have access to funding for schools, have access to opportunities and work permits and work grants when they leave. And so we are seeing right now in this moment, especially in 2020, the uprising of not a new civil rights movement, not a new rebellion, and not even a new activist. It's a continuation of what we've seen since the Black Panther Party for personal defense, since Black Power was the slogan, and now the slogan is Black Lives Matter, to demand that, listen, we recognize the racial disparities in mass incarceration, that Black people don't commit more crimes than white people do, but they're over half of the population. We recognize that police brutality happens all over the country, except for white people don't get over policed. Black people do. People of color do. And there's a Washington Post just posted an article that talked about the disparities in police officers killing Black people versus killing white folks, or shooting and killing white folks. And because of our population side, we're 14% here in the country. We find that Black police officers shoot and kill Black people and immigrants and Latino and Latinx folks and Asian Pacific Islander folks more than they kill and shoot and murder white people because of the population size. So I want people to think about racism, not in the sense of racism doesn't mean, oh, you're just being mean to me, right? Because being mean to me, who cares? People are mean to people all the time. That's discrimination. That's prejudice. That's oppression. That's bias. That's all the things that we learn. But when we talk about racism, in my mind and in the work that I've been doing for the last 12 years, it is tied specifically to systems. And those are the systems that we're naming.
Farooq?
Yes, if I may react. Yes, I mean, exactly what I told you. We should not only be speaking on the tone, on the line of only what is happening in America. That is where we are going to qualify racism in the bigger picture, that is what it is, the whole world. I'm saying that racism, it is not only Black to white or what is in America. I've said that the weaknesses which he's mentioning about or talking about is different. It's a form of government systems of the Americans. So if we bring it back to Europe or other parts, we should not be looking at it that Europe, every white man is a racist. I don't want to have that impression.
Yeah, I never said that. I said just America.
I'm just saying that would be a political activism explanation of racism. But then in the context of race, we are referring to color. In the context of color, we have 5 of the world. And I'm saying that the American government, the Constitution of the Americans, if you refer, you go back to the Constitution, have we expunged, taken out some of these disparities that she's talking about? Have we taken it out? Let's look at the Black Matters Matter, or the Black Man's Life Matter. Okay, look at it from that point. One would ask, how many people are side by side campaigning, demonstrating for the black man? The whites are more than the blacks. So if the racism,
what in America? Yes. So I think there was a lot of black people that, I mean,
excuse me, you look, you're talking about how is the size of the black population. The black population is 14 million, 14%. Not all of them are on the streets, she knows. Are you getting me? But then what about Ireland? Has Irish got a black? No. English is not a black dominant nation. Germany had a demonstration. Norway had a demonstration. Finland had a demonstration. Australia had a demonstration across the world. What about Asia? What about Japan? What about Chinese? Where, how should the Chinese, the whole world demonstrated? And I'm saying that, where is that animal of the racism that all these whites congregate around us that we are going to catch, and we can't find that racist animal? It is the system. And that system, it should be seen as a political weaknesses or political institution of the Americans that is seen as the world superpower. Nobody told America to declare themselves as a world superpower. They were declared as a superpower by they themselves. After the fall, after the end of the Second World War in 1945, when America gathered the whole world that we are fighting, the only place to make peace come to New York, and the whole world came. So America felt that they have everywhere, everybody there in America. That became the superpower. So one would expect much from them. But individual cases, like my sister made mention of, a school, teacher not paid, teacher not paid there. I'm saying that it is not like that the whole world. It is the subjective, oppressive weaknesses of the American system. And that should not be seen.
And I think Tiffany agrees that the system, that's what she's
I'm just talking about it. Yeah. We're not,
yes,
we're not
we're saying if we are accusing, yes, if we are accusing a particular political system, a particular weaknesses in institution called the American institution, I'm saying that one would expect more. Yes, of course, all of us, some of us, we know American very well. Yes, we know that when a black and a white, before a judge, etc. But then one would also ask, how well, when it's black to black, we eliminate the word racism because the race is the same. But I'm asking ourselves that the way the Italian Americans are together, the Spanish Americans is not only Mexico, it's not only Ecuador, it's not Puerto Rico, it's not only Argentines. All of them, they see themselves as one. And I'm saying that we Africans, Black Americans, don't forget that the time that we were called the Negroes, we fought against that word because Negroes was tied to slave trade. Then we came to Black American. We said, no, we have the ethnicity, which is the ethnicity, the ethnic background is African American. So we want to be called African Americans. That one we've seen it. So if we're African Americans, I'm looking at how best we will protect ourselves, we will unite ourselves, we will love ourselves. Then, if you look at a typical case example of the Jewish is an a white race. But then their identity or their ethnic background is Jewish. What do they do? Due to Holocaust, due to XYZ, how many of them are in Israel? Just only a handful of about 8 million. A handful of about 8 million. Over 9 million Jewish are scattered around the world. Where are they? In the United States of America. Let me conclude.
Okay, go.
They are in the United States of America. They are in France. They are in Russia. They are in Switzerland. They are all over. What do? They pull themselves together. But then in the context of the black, we, you, myself, Africans, the black man, the Pacific. How well do we connect with our brothers and sisters in the Pacific? How well does Africa connect? In this struggle, how well has Africa been involved with the support of our brothers and sisters in the United States in the struggle? Africa now to today on this matter, admittedly, are silent. And I'm saying that the protection of a particular race, the Indians, the Chinese race, because of how Japanese treated Chinese, when they united, they divided, they strategized themselves not to allow anybody to slip through. They united. And I'm saying that, how well have we, so that if even the system, the political system is fighting against us, how well are we united? We should not be talking always about the individual cases. Yes, I'm going to look for accommodation. He's a black man, they didn't give. She's a green man or green or blue person, they didn't give. I'm saying that certain race had existed in America, they wiped them off. But then we have had the chance to grow. I'm saying that the unification, the American bondage, togetherness of the black themselves. Let me not use the sad example, but then it calls for us to use. If Tiffany will tell us the 4 people that were engaged in that disgusting death of our brother, was there a black man there? I think there was a black police officer there. There was a Chinese, and you call a white man. I expected that all of them holding guns, being in the police, they know their job, they know the assignment, and you sit down as a black man, as an African American, and then a white man was perpetuating such kind of a heinous crime, killing your own brother. Maybe a white would have opposed. Maybe the Chinese against Chinese, they would have opposed. I expected greatly, not the person who did that, even our brother who was among them, to have stood up and said that this will not happen. These are some of the things that activity or activist group like Tiffany should be carrying the message to the Americans that, okay, enough is also enough. When we cannot see ourselves like how the Jewish, they are together, how the Italians are together, how the Persians.
You think that we are not together as black people?
We are not together, but is aware that we are not together.
Do you
the
think
black African
more? Let me get Tiffany to come in. Obviously, with Tiffany, why do you think the particular video of George Floyd sparked a huge cry for justice? Although we've seen so many of these things happen to black people, why do you think that the George Floyd one was just enough is enough, basically?
In 2014, when we saw the death of Michael Brown, I think that the country's outpour said that enough was enough then. I don't want us to get so caught up in the George Floyd video thinking that this is the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back, because since the last 2 weeks have happened, we've seen the murder by police of Sean Reed, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tony McDade. Nina Pop was just murdered and killed. There's a young Latinx boy who I can't remember his name, but he's 18 years old, and he was a security guard at an auto zone in Los Angeles, California, which is where I'm originally from. And police rolled up, and while he was running away because he was scared for his life, even though he was the paid security officer for the business, they shot and killed him, and he was only 18 years old. And then we've seen multiple, I think we've seen 3 or 4 now, lynchings in this country that have taken place in the last week. So why, to your question, why do I think that, George Floyd's video sparked a lot? I think it was a combination of a few things. One, Washington, D.C. is still on lockdown. I've been in the house on lockdown because of COVID-19 on the stay-at-home ordinance for 103 days, 102, 103 days. You have 60 million people who are unemployed, including my mother, who lost her job during the pandemic. You have students who are not in school because schools are shut down. You have students who don't know if they'll be returning back in the fall. Multiple schools have said, including in Florida and California, where we have some of our biggest school systems, have said that they are not returning in person in the fall to go back to school, but they expect students to pay the same cost of tuition, which I don't know about everywhere else, but the cost of tuition in the States is stupid expensive. In the time that I was in school, it increased almost 100%. So that's just when I was in school, and that was 10 years ago. And so right now, the bandwidth of, I think, the communities that we're seeing who are taking out into the streets has really ran extremely thin. We have a Congress and we have a White House that decided to give money to corporations instead of bailing out small businesses. We have a White House who has chopped the budget for our electoral system and closed down a bunch of things in this country so that folks do not have the access to not only vote in person, which is what most Black people do. They vote in person because they don't trust the mail in this country. Speaking of the mail, the president also cut the budget of our United States Postal Service, which is written in our Constitution as an essential that we have in this country, as an effort to also disenfranchise the voting by mail. We have a leadership in this. I'm looking at police right down here from my street. We have a leadership in this country, especially here in DC, actually my mayor, who has decided to increase the police budget $19 million, but has given no money to teachers so that they can get paid, schools in the community, and or healthcare facilities, hospitals, and essential workers. So I think when we saw the George Floyd video, it was the reminder that
those things,
it was just like all the things laying on top of each other. And it was the reminder that even when we can fight for ourselves, even when we can still do the right thing, even when we can be unarmed or sleeping in our bed or driving in the car or walking down the street with a bag of Skittles or heading home to our grandmother's house from the liquor store, whether we can be in church, because we were praying in church in South Carolina at Ebenezer Baptist Church, no matter where we are, we could be in a movie theater. I could be walking down the street tomorrow at a protest unarmed, and still the consequences of the color of my skin and the systems of policing in this country remind people that policing is not to take care of us. Policing doesn't make us feel safe. In actuality, policing is dangerous. Funding needs to go to other public services instead of funding police. And it's the reminder that in a nation where we just had a Black president, the white supremacy clapback that is enraged because of the for future that this country is going to be mostly people of color because we are the rising majority, et cetera, that there is a race competition and war that is happening, and it comes at the cost of people's personal pockets. And so I think it's all of those things, right, Danita? It's not just one video that we saw that pissed us off and that got us mad. It's a combination of all those things that made us upset and that got us exhausted. The NAACP launched a campaign called We Are Done Dying, Enough is Enough. So I'm glad he said that enough is enough, because we've been saying that for years. Folks have been saying that since my parents were young. Enough is enough. But
somebody's asked the question, why has the struggle taken so long? As you mentioned, it has been on since the time of Black Panther.
Yeah, it's been on longer than that. It's been on since we got here in 1619. If I had the answer for that, we'd be able to solve it by now. If I knew why it took this long, I'd be able to combat it. So I don't think I have the best answer because we're still trying to figure it out. But one of the things that I will say is systematic racism is institutional. It's not the KKK members walking down the Capitol with guns in their white capes and gowns yelling that white lives matter, which we just saw not too long ago. It's not just somebody calling somebody the N-word. It's not just racial discrimination at the grocery store. Systematic racism is possible because of the policies, the legislation, and the laws that have been passed in this country that actually make it easier for some folks and harder for others. And so it's going to be a longer term fight because political power is involved. It's not just the culture or the mindset of people's evilness towards communities of color. And so we have to play an inside and an outside game. We have to fix the culture and the moral compass of the country, and we have to change legislation and change laws. There are still states in this country where slavery is legal. There are still states in this country that say that if you have been incarcerated, you shouldn't have the right to vote, even if you served all of your time. there are still states in this country that won't let women choose what they're going to do with their own bodies. And so there's a lot of things that legislation-wise and constitutionally that we need to change. And so I think that's probably why it might be taking a long time. But also, last thing I'll say is, you know, white parents teach their white kids that some of this stuff is okay, right? And so it's the generations of passing down the information or passing down the biases, passing down the racism, and allowing folks to believe that what is happening, as long as it benefits them, is okay, even if it hurts everybody else. We saw yesterday, Donald Trump had a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where Black Wall Street was, that was burnt down back in the back before the civil rights movement. And at the rally, Donald Trump said to everybody across the room, if I give people more COVID-19 testing, then more people will show themselves sick, because we're able to give people testing. So everybody that will get tested will actually know how many people are sick.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump said, because I don't want to know how many people are sick, I don't want people to keep giving testing. Which is backwards, because don't you want to help people who are sick?
To get better.
Denying them the access of COVID-19 testing, which has disproportionately impacted Black people who have been killed. I know 3 people who have been killed, just myself, from COVID-19, even in my own family. So if we're not able to get access to the testing, and people in the audience were like, yeah, and I was like, no. All of y'all are at this protest without your mask, without your gloves, without your hand sanitizer, yelling. So the droplets are getting all over the place. So all y'all gonna get sick. And you have a world leader who is telling the audience that I don't want people to get tested, because if you get tested, we'll have to help you. That's why it's taking so long, because it's not just moral, it's not just bias, it's not just cultural, it's also in our policy. Absolutely.
Tiffany, do you think Africans on the continent fully understand racism? And do you think racism in America is somehow affect Africans in Africa?
I'll answer the second question first. I do think that racism in America doesn't just impact the continent. I think it impacts the entire globe. I've seen and know that when police show up in Ferguson, Missouri, they are using the same military tactics of Israeli soldiers who are currently occupying Palestinian territory, right? And the money that this country sends over to across the globe to sustain that white supremacy and that violence is evident. Okay. I've only been to Ethiopia and Ghana, which is where you and I met. I can't speak for the entire continent. I don't know. What I can tell you is that it has been extremely eye-opening since the year of return to get the connection between how we understand white supremacy, how we understand political and economic power as it relates to race, between Black folks. And growing up in school, I didn't learn anything about the motherland. I didn't learn anything about the continent. They don't teach that. They don't teach us anything in public schools. They teach us everything bad about the continent and nothing good, right? So it was very eye-opening last year when I came back in August. The NAACP brought over 300 people to come to Ghana. It was the largest delegation last year. And I was super blessed to be able to not just staff the delegation, but to learn as much as I did, to meet incredible people like you, who we have worked together now when we came to the Image Awards in Los Angeles, because it allows all of us to change our own narrative and thinking and unlearn a lot of the things that we thought we knew just because we were told those things that were very violent. And I use violent on purpose. And so I can't speak if the entire continent knows about racism and how it impacts. I think that there's a disconnect still in the reality of being a Black person in America and the reality of being an African on the continent. I think there are different experiences that we need to continue to come together and talk about and understand and grow together so that we can actually all get to true liberation one day.
Okay. Farooq, do you have anything to say?
Yes. Well, then again, I always would like to make a reflection that the 400 years history of the slave trade, we should put it behind us. 400 years is far too long for us always to keep on thinking and feeling that had been and that is still what is actually the effect. It is true, as I've said in my intro, that America as a country has a problem with this institutional, call it either color against black or white or other. But even I want to emphasize that it is not only Tiffany and some of us, we speak maybe only against blacks, but how well do we bring the highlights of what against other color of the United States? Do we have other color there? The answer is yes. Do we have the Persians? Have we heard their stories? No. Have we heard the stories of the Italian color in America? No. Do we hear the stories of what the Chinese America? Maybe no. But we hear the stories of ourselves. And I'm saying that, yes, the institution, there is a breakdown. There is a, how do we call it? Certain things are not properly done. But at the end of the day, one would ask, the entire American white population is far bigger than the black. And yet, these whites voted a black American to be the president of that country. Yes, to have a political, what? To lead the country. So it means that the same racism subject or the racist that we think maybe sometimes we try to generalize, they voted His Excellency, the President Obama. I'm asking, what was the subjective changes that was brought to bear? We are making and we are talking about supremacy, the imperialism, etc. My dear, for all of us, supremacy, imperialism, racism, if we qualify those who think the entire race, which as in that completely disagree, it is not a negative word, but then using it against somebody, racist act or racial act against you based on color, that one you can call it. It could be a criminal offense, etc. And there are laws on that. When you come and back to Europe, the blacks in Europe, we are minority. But let me say that the European whites that went to America to colonize or to take their country typical case scenario, Germany, that hasn't got any connection to any other African country. The whites of Germany, the whites of France, Switzerland, Austria, other countries, they have married more blacks, African blacks, more than in the United States, where black American, either male or female, where black African, either male or female, have married ourselves. There is something that I think I expect, Tiffany, that we should. They came home. There was homecoming summit. And I believe very well that Tiffany is aware that the African continent sat. And then at that time, President Kufuor of Ghana, Obasanjo, Festus Mogae, Muammar Gaddafi, many others, okay, Thabo Mbeki, they put a 57th state of Africa. Out of the 56, they added one state called the African diaspora. That stands as a country. A mission of an embassy was established and created in Ghana, which I think Tiffany have visited, where you have somebody the likes of Ambassador Dr. Bennett. Yes. So it means that Africa made an attempt. Yes, we have what? Homecoming summit that has taken place. I'm asking, are we, Tiffany, are we Africans and the Americans, the black American, the black African American, how well have we bond ourselves as the Jewish have done in America? How well are we to ourselves as compared to the Italians, Americans? How well are we to the Spaniards, who are so many? We have the Spanish, the Puerto Rican, all of them. But when you meet them, you see them as one Spanish. It is not true. They have equal different countries. But in our case, as Peter Tosh said, as long as you're a black man, no matter where you come from, you are an African. How is it that, Tiffany, a black American or African American meets me and asks me, where are you from? Are you an African? No, I'm not an African, I'm an Asian. How well have we, the activism, what we are doing now, I'm saying that George Floyd has a strong soul. You ask her a question, why is it like that? It is not well, she answered part, but I'm saying that it's rather he is the one with the strongest soul. That brings about this kind of, we call it a revolution around the world. But the revolution around the world is the same white who are more. Therefore, Tiffany and the group and the Americans See how well you bring yourself together, bond with your brothers and sisters also from the Africa. And the question of where are you from? How many African Americans in the 21st century would ask, if you mention you are from Senegal, they start laughing. If you mention you are from Ghana, where is Ghana? They don't want to know. I'm sorry. Some of them do.
Wait, I'm sorry. I don't want you to generalize all Black people in America. There are clearly some interactions that clearly you have had where it has not felt like Black people have loved on you. But I want to be very clear in saying that, like, there are plenty of Black. I don't want to generalize all Black folks saying Black people like Africa.
It is the same way. It is the same way. I don't want us to generalize that when we make mention of racism, we see it as a white man against Black man. I don't want.
But I didn't say it was. I never said it was white man against Black man.
We're educating the public. I'm not referring to you.
Okay.
You haven't said that.
I just don't want folks to walk away confused. If folks walk away confused, thinking that racism is just Black and white, and they're not understanding.
We are educating the public. For a good number of people, even within Europe, when they mention racism, squarely the mind goes to Black and white. That is not what. That is what I want to separate the clarity, because we will go to the Asia and see what the Asian ethnic group of the Arabs, how they were also subjected by the same white race, how they've been treated out there in the Asia, the Arabian Peninsula, the Persian Peninsula, and then the Southeastern Asian countries, and how they were also divided. Let us look at it in that context. What I'm trying to say is that I'm not generalizing anybody. You are not like that. But I'm saying that good number, the Africans in America have not told you their stories. The same thing, Americans, Black Americans, African Americans have not told Africans their stories. The subject is, are we enemies to ourselves? And I'm saying that Black man, Black American, African American, Africans, we have not united enough to use our race, which is called the racism, the idea of protecting our race. We haven't protected our race. And the issue comes back.
I don't agree. Can I ask two more things?
Let me land.
Marie's comment because you put Marie's comment on the stage.
Let me land. When you come to Africa, Africa is where the Black races. Go to the north of Africa. Are you telling me Algerian is not African? Algeria is an African. Are you telling me Tunisian is not African? Tunisian is an African. Egyptian is an African. Are you getting me? North of them. But then ask an Algerian in Arab, Antamunwen, where are you from? They strictly would tell you that Anna Mafisha Afrikia, Anna Muni Europa. Europa, why did Africa show your best? They're telling you that me, I'm in Europe bigger than in Africa. I'm not an African. Their story is not different from Egypt. Their story is not different from Libya. The Benghazi people saw themselves as white Europe. And ask yourself that if I'm an African, from Ghana, I'm in Libya. From Ghana, I'm in Tunisia. From Ghana, I'm in Morocco. How they treat and how we treat ourselves. We're using the Black continent, Africa. And I'm saying that among ourselves, in Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, La Côte d'Ivoire, Sudan, etc., how well have we put ourselves together? I do not want to take the subject matter when somebody comes to talk about white supremacy, colonization. I'm sorry, it's a crazy discussion because colonization took place in Saudi Arabia, took place in Asia. Chinese were colonized, Japanese were colonized, every country were colonized. So therefore, it doesn't come into question. We haven't taken care. We haven't held ourselves together. That is why in the African continent, on the African continent, if you talk about unity, it brings down to ethnicity. When you look at the ethnicity, you come to the tribal settings. How do we treat ourselves? Let us not forget we are talking about one race. So we've taken the race out.
I have to stop you there because she has only 5 minutes and she has to leave.
Problem.
Yeah, I don't extra. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to get her to, respond and then ask her last question before she goes. Is there anything that you wanted to respond to what Farooq had said?
No. Go ahead. What's the last question?
Okay. So there's a lot of successful Black people in America with a lot of power and influence. Do you think that their power and influence is enough to effect long-lasting change? If yes, why does racism still continue at such appalling rates in America?
No, I do not think that the rich or the loud or the influencers that are Black and identified in America have enough power to change racism in this country. No, because otherwise they would have been done it already. Folks are very familiar with the names of Huey P. Newton, very familiar with the names of Bobby Seale, who are the two founders of the Black Panther Party. They're familiar with Martin Luther King. They're familiar with Rosa Parks. They're familiar with Fannie Lou Hamer. They're familiar with Ida B. Wells, but that did not change everything. And so I don't think it's up to one person or a certain type of leadership to change it. I think it's going to require every single person here in the States and globally to help us fix this problem. But before I go, I want to make sure I clarify something. Rashad Brooks, who was just murdered and killed, the father of 3 in Atlanta, Georgia. He was drinking and he was drunk and he did not want to drive. So he was trying to sleep off the alcohol in the car. Someone called the police and the police showed up, patted him down to make sure that he didn't have any weapons on him. And then did a drug test and a drunk test to make sure that he was actually drunk. He did confess and say he had been drinking. And then they pulled out a taser to tase him. He was unarmed. He wasn't being violent. He didn't try to run. They tried to tase him. And he grabbed the taser in fear and threw the taser across the parking lot. Then he took off running. And while he was running away, officers shot him 7 times and killed him, claiming that they were warning shots, but they hit him in his back. The people that we're watching in the States, I don't want people to be confused. I saw a comment earlier that said that these lives have been given as a sacrifice. In the Black Lives Matter movement and at the NAACP, we don't use the language sacrifice because it was against their will. These lives have been taken from us. They were murdered. It is not a sacrifice. George Floyd did not give up his life as sacrifice for the movement. George Floyd and his family and his brother, who I've spoken to his mom, they actually want their son here.
Yeah.
They don't want their son to be given as a sacrifice. He had children. He actually wants to be here on this Father's Day with his baby girl, not to be taken in the hands of police officers against his will. When he said he could not breathe, when he asked them to let him go, when he was unarmed, and when he cried for his mother because he knew that his life was going to be taken. Same thing for Eric Gardner, same thing for Breonna Taylor, same thing for Rashad Brooks. So I just want us to think about the Black Lives Matter movement and what's happening in context and not think about it as a sacrifice for the larger cause, because I'm going to be honest. I've been doing this work for 12 years. I'm 31 years old. I still have a long way to go and a lot to learn. But what I do know for a fact, because of 2014 and what was happening, because of 2016, what was happening, when I was in college, somebody hung a noose at my school when I was running for student body president. So racism is everywhere.
Yeah.
What we're going to see, I think, in the next couple of weeks is a huge resurgence of people making sure that they turn out to go vote in November 3rd for the general election, so that we can not only vote for the next president of this country, but also every single senator, House of Representative, district attorney, attorney general that then selects their police chief, school board members and city council members, so that we can change the landscape of politics in this country, pending all the things that we're seeing. And it is going to take time. Nipsey Hussle said this is a marathon. It is not a race. So we're not going to end it all in 2020. It's going to continue. Our job and my job is to make sure that we're making this place a better place for the folks that are coming after us, because my parents and my grandparents were a part of this same movement, and it's still not over. So I appreciate you, Dena, for having me on. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to stay longer. My family left me to go to the things I got to get to. I want to wish today's a really happy day, and I know that Friday was Juneteenth here in the States. Y'all don't celebrate Juneteenth because you don't have to, but here in Juneteenth in America is when the day that Texas slaves realized that they were 2 years late after the Emancipation Proclamation and were also freed and should have been freed 2 years ago. And so we celebrated Friday, Juneteenth. We're celebrating today Black Fathers, because Black fathers matter. So I just want to say happy Father's Day to every single person that's viewing and tuning in. Dena, I love you. Let me know how I could be helpful.
I love you I love you too, Tiff. But your last words for me, my show is not about just talking about the subject, but what are the solutions? What will be your last few words on, people say we are our own worst enemy. You're saying that we're not. What are the solutions for Black people and Africans? What are the solutions for us?
Some of the things have already been mentioned. I want us to unapologetically love ourselves deeper. I want us to take care of ourselves, because the triggering and trauma that happens in my community has longer term mental impacts. And so I need us to take care of ourselves. The call to action that I've been giving to my peers and folks here in the States is to make sure that they go vote, because if they don't vote, it won't change. To make sure that they find a political home so that they can foster their activism and leadership. We all need political homes. I have a church home. I have a political home. It's the NAACP. Folks need to find a space where they can learn and they can build together. And like I said, they need to love on each other and love ourselves in this moment. So I'm about to go do that with my family, because we deserve to celebrate ourselves, even in the midst of crisis when the whole world is attacking us. Black joy is revolutionary. And so we're allowed to celebrate each other and love on each other. And that's part of the takeaways that I have for folks.
Thank you so much, sis, for joining us.
Thank you both.
And God bless you. And hopefully I'll have you on the show again sometime soon.
Looking forward to it. God bless you. Happy Father's Day. Thank you.
Bye. Farooq.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are very simple. My thoughts is that, as I've already defined earlier on, that racism is everywhere. It is not only one race or two races that exist on earth, not only black and white. Other races have suffered more than what we blacks have suffered. And we give a historic background. Let us look at the radiocarbon years before present. The radiocarbon years before present, a lot of things that happened even back to religious days in the 620s. Now, the Asia where we have also Asian race. We have under the Asian race, the Arabs. Who were the Arabs? We have Arabs who are also white race. And then we have the Arabs who are also black race. Typical case scenario of the country Saudi Arabia, which were two countries in several years ago, the Hijaz and the Najd. Look at when the Europeans, they say Europeans, who had gone to the Saudi or the Saudi Arabia, the Al-Malaka Saudia Peninsula, to colonize them. They had Saudi Arabia. They divided the countries in small pockets because they identified big wealth. And they didn't want them to come together. So if you look at Kuwait, you look at Qatar, small Bahrain, Jordan, they separated them. But for your interest, they have tribes like us, 22 tribes of the Saudi. Please, then I'm giving you an assignment. Go and find out today the Saudi Arabia king and the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Go and check historically if they are real Arabs. Go and check if the Saudi kingdom, what kind of the Saudi tribe out of the 22 are they from? Good number of them are white Europeans. Nevertheless, when they were colonized, they have shown also racism among themselves. When they were colonized, they have also made sure that they became one and loved themselves regardless. So you saw the Arabs unification and the Arabs uniting. However, they had tribes, they have ethnicity, they have clans, they have different like how we do. However, they put themselves together. The subject is that the Africans, as I put it before Tiffany, I will not sit on this show and then only read about individual cases that have happened to individual people. Somebody killed, nobody blesses on or nobody is happy when the person is murdered. Nobody's happy when the child is taken out from school because of X, Y, Z. But I'm saying again is that there is no black man that is popular, that is richer than blacks again in the United States of America, which is also white dominance. So how well have they used this to influence also their communities? When we bring subject like that, they say, no, don't talk like that. When we ask them that, how well do you connect your fellow African who comes? Some of them would also say that, no, we came here, we have suffered for you people. If we were not here, you wouldn't have been here. That argument falls flat because we would also contend, African can also say that the stronger men and women of our continent during the 400 years ago were those who were taken out from our country to go and work there. Maybe we would have been stronger also here if they were alive because they took the energetic ones away. That is also a part of an argument. So the 400 years is too long. America has given, or they have education, just like how the Spaniards have had education, Italians have had education, but Italian American helped themselves. So the Black American, the African American, it's a challenge to all of us. that if that is the case, where is the unification? How far have we united as blacks? Look at this, the Caribbeans, and I'm referring to the United Kingdom. The Jamaicans in the United Kingdom, they are what? Immigrants like you and I. They are also Africans like you and I. How is it that a Jamaican, an islander living in the UK, sees himself or herself better than you from Africa? Whereas an Indian will not do the same thing to his brother. So if you give an Indian a job, he makes sure he picks only Indians. He's practicing racism. He's not being a racist. He's a racist when you come there and say, I won't pick you because of X, Y, Z. They are protecting their race. Look at the Pakos, the Pakistanians, who are originally Persians. How do they treat themselves in London? When a Pakistani has a shop, a restaurant, you see every Pakistani going there to eat. What are they doing? They are protecting themselves. They believe in themselves.
So we're not protecting our race. We're not protecting our race. Okay.
They are protecting
so
their
how do we move on? For me, you know, we need solutions, Farooq. How do we move on? We know that we are not unified. Even in our culture, you can't even marry certain
that's the tribal.
Yeah. Certain tribes. So that's a form of racism, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a tribalism, a tribalistic system, and it's also one with the racism. Because we are blacks, we cannot use it. But the tribalism is the worst more than racism. Tribalism is worse because tribalism has to do with one race with different ethnic backgrounds. Who are the ethnic backgrounds? Take typical case of Ghana. Ghana ethnic background, we have the Akans, the Dabanians, the Votarians, the Enzimas, and etc. The Akans comprises the Kwapim, Fantis, etc. One ethnic race, ethnic group. How is it that an Ashanti will tell you that I will not marry Fanti? It's one ethnic background, Akan, as the ethnicity. But even with that, when you transcend and go beyond that, the ethnicity or the ethnic background, they go down to the tribe, then they move down to the clan. What clan? I'm a royal, and typical case scenario in Kumasi, for instance, somebody will say that, look at the royalty when it comes to disposition, when it comes to display of arrogance among ourselves. Let's take a bigger country like Nigeria. How many tribes do they have? The three main tribes: the Yoruba, the Igbo, are you getting me? And the Hausa. Yoruba strictly tells you that I will not marry an Igbo. Igbo strictly tells you I will not marry Yoruba. Hausa can marry Yoruba. Hausa will not marry Igbo. So that one, you are calling it, we are calling it what? We are calling it, yes, tribalism. Yes, tribalism is the West. Now look at countries on the African continent that faces the same problem. If you go to Kenya, they have the same two tribes, main tribes with different ethnic backgrounds, etc. What do they do? Ethiopia, the Omoro tribe, is the same thing that we do. Why is that? Why are we still conditioned that we shouldn't marry different tribes? Why is it still happening? That is why we are talking about when in the context of a white man who brought down their tribes. It does not mean they didn't have tribes. We are practicing tribalism. It is worse. So if you ask me why, it is because a black man discriminates. And discrimination in this context is prejudice, injustice, favoritism, preferential treatment, either by age, either by sex, that is the gender, or either by tribe, either by even ethnicity, where you come from. And I've given you that when you go to Dagon land, Dagomba in Ghana, you will hardly find that the Dagbani will say that I will not marry to Frafra. Frafra will not marry to Dagati. Dagati will not marry to Wala. Look at the minority tribes spread across the north. They don't. Come down. Even the Fanti region, which is Fanti Akan and Fanti Akan. What do? Somebody said, Mifri Kumfi. When we are, somebody will tell me, Guaini. When I'm talking about Guaya, if Winneba. So in this regard, we are looking at a picture of Black America or American continent and seeing racism out there. But I'm saying that no, diffuse that context, because if you see yourself as a minority person, a minority color in Europe, don't think they hate you. Because Europeans gives you room, they allow you to sleep side by side, share the same apartment, share the same house. It is not all of them. But then even within Europe, if you look at how the Germans, they wanted to build their country, rebuilding their country, they did with the Turkish. But when they did with the Turkish, ask yourself how many Germans married Turks as compared to how they married blacks. And you will see from distance that the Turkish are white. No, the Turks is also an Asian race, out of which they have also ethnic background, the Turks, and then also the Kurds. So we have played it, and it is played all over across board. But we should not choose and pick as an African that when one single white man does something to you, you are racist. Yes, of course. Come back home. In Ghana, where you are, in the United Kingdom, look at the kind of associations that you have out there. Kwawuman, Achimman, Asanteman, Wota, etc. So many of them. Is it different from Canada? Is it different from New York? Where sometimes subjectively, they even have problems. And some feel that you are talking about supremacy. That is what is called supremacy. Our tribe is better than yours. That is supremacy. That is imperialism in a different context. So we should not choose as Africans and pick where the story is against you, then you pick on the white man. When it's against us, then we keep quiet, like in the case of the black in America. In America, Dena, you know, how do we love ourselves, Africans, Americans, but we kill each other more than a white as we see it out here. And I'm saying that it is too much. In the UK, what do Jamaicans and other islands treat Africans or the other way around? How many Africans are murdered in a year? In London, street of London, are there no blacks against blacks? Let's go to Holland, the Dutch, the Antilles, the Curaçaos, the Surinams, the Guadeloupe, and etc. in France, the blacks. What did they do to themselves in Holland? How the Curaçaos, how the blacks, are they blacks, not to blacks? But if you meet an Indian to Indian in Holland, they respect and love themselves. So the solutions, as you ask, part of it is that we are not united enough. Mm-hmm. We do not love ourselves enough. We do not patronize our products enough. When we have the power and we have a job, we have a work, we are even afraid to bring your own brother or sister to come and work with you as an African, either Ethiopian, other Kenyan, etc., because the person makes sure that you are exited. Indian will not do that to his fellow Indian.
Is it trust? It's trust, right?
It is racism in the other way, if you define racism as a negative word. But that is the tribalistic lack of trust, and it is our kind of lifestyle and the mentality. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with anybody's constitution. It has nothing to do with any laws or regulations, but it has to do with how best our race, we organize and put ourselves together. How well does it happen that the north of Africa in Africa, the 5 countries in North Africa, some of them now, they migrate, they join even the League of the Arabs, saying that they are not Africans. Who has asked them? A white man did not tell you to do that. So if you look at it, the whole thing, it is the lack of love and lack of protecting our race. That is why we are seeing other races that have put themselves together. We call them racist, or they are practicing racism. In any case, Ms. Denta, in Europe, we have what is called the skinheads. Are they blacks? No. Skinheads are white boys who have skinheads. What do they perpetrate? What criminal acts do they do? Are they African? Are they doing that against only Africans? No. The pro-Nazis in Europe, they are not pro-Nazis against African. They are pro-Nazis against other tribal settings, against other whites, against Romanians, against the Balkans. Because the skinheads in Europe, they hate the Balkans. But the Balkan skinheads also hate their own also other Balkans. So it is everywhere. Racism, as I said, the racism, the radiocarbon 8 years before present, racism has existed. And you can date back up to Columbus, Christopher Columbus. You can date back up to the Roman Empire when racism, the word race, was used. But then it was protection. That is why they invoked Race Protection Act. The Race Protection Act was not Racism Protection Act. But in the context of explanation, definition, don't let anybody come and read to you what is in the what? In the dictionary. Dictionary meanings at the time are today reflecting the population, the changes. I'm saying that communism in the dictionary sense was a negative word, but today communism is a positive for China. So the British, the Americans, the Western that hated communism, they are doing business with China. Does it become a negative word? Answer is no. So let's look at the graduation of the what? The generation. Generation is changing, passing by. So you can't sit back and still be talking about the white, a black man who was brought to come and build George Washington Bridge. But talk about the red Indian who owned Hawaii and they cut them into pieces. Talk about also the United States, the white American supremacists that we call. In the 16th century, 17th century, 18th century, and early part of the 19th century, a white American commits a crime. A white American system, they hold their genitals and cut. It was not only against blacks. They cut among them.
I'm more concerned about our community because we are blacks, right? I guess the ones that you're talking about, they will be concerned because they're white people. But we are concerned that, you know, we are going through all of these things. And for me, is the younger generation that's coming up. How do we educate them? I think, you know, you said, you know, we should put the 400 years aside. Yes, I agree. But we need to learn our history to enable us to move forward to move forward in our own lives. If we don't know the past, we can't move on. So I feel like it's very, very important that we learn from our history, we learn from our mistakes, and we learn how we can move forward as a community. And how right now, Farooq, the younger generation that is coming up, the youth, you do a lot of youth empowerment. What are you telling the youth to do right now so that we don't continue this for another 400 years?
The youth, and I believe you are not referring on the youth in the United States, the youth in Ghana, the youth in Ethiopia, Kosovo, and the youth also in the United Kingdom, Canada, all over.
Yes.
This is the time that it has become very easier to learn. You may not necessarily have a white man who gave you education, the lecturer, to stand there and teach you about African history. We've had a white, and we are still having black men who are lecturing or teaching a white man. So we can say that we've closed a certain gap. The youth has the computer, which I didn't have maybe my time. Somebody didn't have their time. Today, it is easier. What does it mean? What it means is that the same way we allow, you will see most often, especially in the United States, a black African, African, not American African, allows their children to go overnight. They spend their nights in the homes of whites. White kids spend their nights in the home of Africans. But we don't have that with African, black American. They don't have that with us. Why? So these teachings must begin not only with references to the activism and then references to the ages of 400 years ago, the 16th century, but let us talk about how best we will leverage and then understand each other that other races have put themselves together, so they are developing. India were colonized by United Kingdom. Is that correct? Yes. India today is richer than United Kingdom. It is by their love, by their unity, by their endurance. Who tells me as an African, who tells you as an African, that you are talking about white imperialism and supremacy? We gave you independence. You carry your gold, you carry your money, you carry your cash and come and deposit it in euro. No white has brought his money down to Africa. You are saying you are not racist. You are saying you are not tribalistic. You are saying you are a white man is still what? Holding you, colonizing you. But then I ask, what about the other countries like Malaysia, like Singapore, like Saudi, like others who were also Japan, who were colonized, and they've made it because they did that with what? Oneness, one love, respect for their race, believing in their race, believing in their ideologies, trusting their race. It does not make them racist because they've shown consistent love for their race. We have not shown consistent love for our race. Sudanese, Ugandan, look at how we treat ourselves. In London, typically, very funny. funny world, London. How Africans there see themselves. You will see a Kenyan here, you see a Ghanaian here, they don't even talk. But you can see a Ghanaian with white, you can see a Kenyan with white, they are fine. So the trust is not there. The love for ourselves is not there. The story is not different from France. But if anything to go by, the whites that we are generalizing some people, then they are all what? They are racist. They have given you, living there consistently, even their citizenship. But then let's ask, how many of them have we also given them their citizenship? We haven't given them any. We have not. Not that they don't want. Go and see how they also go through before they get even our working permit as our resident permit in Africa. Put that one aside. If we generalize that racism has to do with the color white and black, then I'm asking that how many racism government perceived or the white society that they give loans, they come to our aid, they come to an emergency when our countries are down, economic recessions, medical, defense, hospital, everything. At the end of the day, we are calling on the racism folk, if the racism is negative, for them to come and assist us. So it is not true. Some of the causes are our own cause. You cannot also blame that colonization existed anywhere. Colonization existed in the 8th century. So you don't talk about colonies. There was racism and the tribalism. Jesus Christ faced the same thing. Prophet Anabi Muhammad said, he faced racism, tribalism in his own backyard in Islam, where they were protected also from a certain world and some tribal. There were tribal differences. So all these countries have gone through what we are going through today. But if you look at largely the whole world, only the black man, only the black race that have not put themselves together. And a typical example as we speak today, go to Dubai. Dubai, the white, the blacks there, Cameroon and Nigeria, I don't know whether the entire you are aware. They are killing themselves today. There's a war between Cameroonians and Nigerians. Already over 5 to 6. Yes.
Wow.
Over a sale of alcohol, bottle of beer.
Wow.
This is where I sell my beer. Cameroonians have come there. They just only put, how do we call it, bottles and kill themselves. Now there is a curfew in the black community, not the Indian community.
Is it the similar thing that happened in South Africa where
I'll come there. I'll come there. I said we should not choose and pick when to apply the word racism because sometimes we are stupid. I'm sorry for this language, but that is the reality.
It's 19 hours.
How come by Nigerian and Cameroonian there is a war ongoing today as we speak? Every Nigerian wants to kill Cameroonian because there is what? Are you protecting your race? Are you showing love? So Dubai will sit down, and Emirati will sit down, and Indians sit down and see that Africans, you don't love yourself. So when you see the Pakistanians and Indians united, you call them racist. Are we crazy? Come back to South Africa. The history of South Africa. Racism was not an issue. There was a political form called the apartheid. The apartheid system had some blacks who actively participated. The police apartheid, the apartheid time, the black police of South African, find out from London. Those who were with the whites, the black police, they severed their own blacks more than the whites treated them. Now, what happened? The Batustans, as we used to call them, where country like Ghana stepped forward, that it was a protest, it was forbidden, and the whole African protested that if you hold an African passport, because of the apartheid system, don't go to South Africa. It was stamped in the Ghana passport that you are not allowed to. It was a protest. Nelson Mandela, Winnie Mandela, all of them, most of them, Miriam Makeba, they all had one time used Ghana passport. Until the struggle of South Africa, they got independence. When they got the independence, countries like Nigeria all over, they supported the struggle. African continent supported the struggle of South Africa. Now they have their independence. No more apartheid, no more pig butter, no more anybody. The government now is in control in the hands of black African. Now, what do we see? When an African is killing the fellow African, we choose and pick xenophobic attack. Why don't you use racism? What is the meaning of xenophobic attack? Are they mad? So we cannot choose as Africans. We choose and all the time we choose and pick. This one is xenophobic. This one is tribalism. This one is ethnicity. This one, no. If you want to treat it the whole this and then qualify it the same. Now the South Africa, the Zimbabweans who are their next door, they have the same tribe across the border. The Zambians, southern part of Namibia, the Swaziland, the Lesotho, the Mozambique, most of these frontline states, they all have the same tribe in South Africa. But today, when South African youth, they strike, what do? They kill West. And then let's talk about we Africans say we love each other. The genocide of Sierra Leone, the genocide of Liberia, genocide of Rwanda, Kagame's Rwanda today. What did we see? A woman was cut into pieces. In Sierra Leone, they amputate right and amputate left. We are Africans. That's what we don't call racism. Where do we call it? Terrorism, rebellion, separatism. How do we define that? It means that we are choosing and picking the meaning of the word, which one that confronts us, and that one gives us a comfort. What have we done, Ms. Denta? Africans subjectively till today, we are still killing and killing in the bush. Joseph Kona, let's go to Liberia, Nigeria, the Boko Haram. What are they doing to their own fellow citizens? Let's go to other parts of Africa, what we are doing to ourselves. And then let's come to compare in the Middle Europe in the 1990, where Yugoslavia started breaking away. What did we see? The Croatians, the Slovenians, the Dubrovniks, the Albanians, the Kosovo, Serbia, Montenegro, Serbia, all of them white race. Have we forgotten of the Sarajevo uprising? How they killed themselves? Was that a white man killing white or white man was killing black among themselves? At the end of the day, today there is peace. They don't hold weapons against each other. Yet, Africa, we are holding guns. Central African Republic, they are in the bush. Congo, they are in the bush. Nigeria, rebels are in the bush. The Amazonians of Cameroon, they are in the bush. So we are what? Indians had their war. They repaired their differences. White race had their problems. They repaired their differences. We are not going to do second, third world, fourth world war again. No, they won't do that. That's why they broke down the tribes. We are till today killing ourselves. And when we come to talk about the politics aspect of it, is the fact that why are we not making our countries better to live so that you will not be a minority in another country? How many Emiratis are in Africa? How many Qatarians are in Africa? How many Saudis are in Africa? But the individual African, in terms of politics, feels that he will steal his money, take the money, and go and deposit the man or the country you claim they are racist. You die and go. They use your money to build their country. So when you come there, you are a minority, distinctive minority society among them. That they don't have you in the continent, on the platform of anywhere. No African is from anywhere in Europe. If you're holding passport of France, it is by migration or migratory that you got there. If you are British, you're in the UK, you're holding passport. It is by migration or migratory that you are there. It does not make you an European or British white. You are not part of the race. So I'm saying that we should also begin to think the love we show to each other. Denta, from 1962, African Union, coach me and ask the African leaders, you've been asking them, whenever you have the chance, ask them, how many declarations have they signed since 1962? They don't sign. They mention the subject. When, at the time of the presence of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi, when there was an attempt that let's put the whole Africa together, let's use one currency, let's use one passport, I'll pay for it from the coffers of Libyan people. Ms. Denta, what did we see? At the time that Colonel Muammar Gaddafi was being killed, African countries, most of us, they were jubilating. Africa was jubilating. But let's see how Africa can go to Europe and take the life of an European president. Let's see how Africa can go to Kosovo and take the president of Kosovo, saying that we don't want him there. Let's see how an African will go to Asia and take out an Asian president because he's long stayed. It is not like that. You don't have the chance. But when it is about us, we allow whites to infiltrate. So if you allow them to come, they didn't invite themselves to come. You allowed them to come. So at the end of the day, you don't apply and use the word supremacy because you are supremacist more than them. Who takes the money of your deprived community and build house and put it in abroad, buy a house in abroad? You are the supremacist, not a white man who is building his country. So let us get the understanding that we cannot keep on mentioning and talking about the history of 400 years of only Black America, the American continent. And justifiably, people have lived on the land. The Spanish went there, not the English. And when they went there, even when they abolished, listen to it, when the slave trade was abolished, country Cuba, that had even some blacks, they said they would not agree. They were still selling people after 1807. Cuba was all in what? Into slave trade. In any case, let's ask ourselves, white man did not come on the soil. The first trade, the people that we took, that the slave trade, where were they taken from? The first people taken were Angolans. It's not the Ghana that we are made to believe. It is not Nigeria. It is not West Africa. No, they were Angolans. They took Congolese. They came to Senegal. They came to Mali, other places before they used Ghana as a transit. What have we all put ourselves? The Pan-Africanism. Tell me, where's the Pan-Africanism? How Africans betrayed their own leaders. How Nkrumah, Lumumba, and others were betrayed by our own Africans. For the white man to infiltrate, come and then take their government out. We should go to Germany and do that. We should go to England and do that. Can you tell the British Queen that you don't like Boris Johnson and we are African continent, they should push him away? Can you do that? No. They are solid.
They are solid. I have Maria on the line. She's gonna have, say a few comments about what you are saying. She is the founder of Ghana Diaspora Women. Sis, what do you have to say with what Farooq is saying?
Right. Thank you so much for allowing me to say a few words, Denta, and good evening to Mr. Farooq and to all the viewers as well. I think I somewhat agree with everything Mr. Farooq is. Let me not say everything. I somewhat agree with some of the submissions Mr. Farooq is making. And I actually listened to Mr. Farooq about 2 weeks ago on Happy FM in Ghana with Kwame Afrifa-Mensah. And I think some of the submissions he's making, yes, we can agree with that. It's come a time now in the history of mankind where we need to have this conversation. But where I have an issue with some of the things Mr. Farooq is saying is that, Mr. Farooq, I think some of you have left this conversation far too late. It's been left far too late. And so when the opportunity has now come for our generation and the next generation to be having this conversation, I think we should rather be encouraged than almost make it sound as if everything is our fault. And one typical example I would like to raise is the analogy about Gaddafi, when Gaddafi was killed and many Africans jubilated. Now, whose fault was that? We all were told that he was an evil person. None of you were able to conscientize us that no, this is one of our own leaders and he is not evil. So if you're telling me that now, then I think you've left it a bit too late, Mr. Farooq. Because I haven't heard your voice on any platform when Gaddafi was killed. I never heard you speak up to say that, no, Africans don't jubilate. This is wrong. I'm only hearing that now. So I think for me, what we should be doing now is rather encouraging ourselves. We've heard too much of what it shouldn't be. Let's begin to focus more on what it should be. And what it should be, let's tell our own success stories. Let's begin to tell more of our own success stories. And let's not also deny the fact that in the midst of everything that is happening is racism, which is the bigger picture. Because over the past couple of weeks, Mr. Farooq, I've heard you on a couple of platforms in Ghana kind of knocking this whole Black Lives Matter movement, mentioning xenophobia, mentioning tribalism. The bigger picture is what the world is looking at now. If we are able to tackle the bigger picture, which is racism, and embedded in racism, as you rightfully say, is tribalism, is xenophobia, is all of these things. And so for me, the solution as an African woman would be to actually fight that systemic injustice. If we are able to knock racism out of the way, eventually it will have a ripple effect on xenophobia. It will have a ripple effect on tribalism. That's the conversation we should be having. But if you make it sound too much as though it is everything is our fault as Black people, I cannot accept that. Now, there's a very fine line between colonization and slavery. You mentioned China, blacks in China. You mentioned the Arab world a lot. Even in terms of the African continent, you mentioned what I would put in quotes, say white Africa versus Black Africa, i.e. Tunisia, Libya, Morocco, all these, those in North Africa versus those of us in the West, the East, etc. Those of us who have a darker skin color. Even within the continent of Africa, we still have that issue. And a typical example that happened in Ghana, I mean, there's been several examples, that have happened in Ghana where we've had foreigners come into Ghana, even from Northern Africa, who have come and treat our own people differently, yet we're all Africans. That is still racism. So let us all collectively tackle the bigger picture. When we finish tackling the bigger picture, we can begin to tackle the other ones. They themselves will automatically begin to fall in place. Because if everybody realizes that, now we're tackling racism, okay, embedded in racism is tribalism, meaning that if I'm a Ga, I should not say that I cannot marry an Ashanti. If I'm an Ashanti, I should not say I cannot marry an Ewe or somebody from the northern part of Ghana. That is wrong. Why? I now know that is wrong because racism is wrong. So let's all together have this racism conversation. Let's all together fight the systemic injustices, because tribalism is systemic injustice. Xenophobia is systemic injustice. And that is what I believe the Black Lives Matter movement is trying to achieve. And we as Black people mustn't knock that down. The moment we knock that down, we are doing exactly what we've been doing for the past 400 years. When these white people came to the continent of Africa, they came along the coasts. Who told them? In Ghana, for example, they came along the coast, Cape Coast, Elmina, all these places, Accra, etc. Who told them that there were other people in the Ashanti region? Who told them there were people in the Achim sector and all those various parts? We told them there are more people there. Let me take you to go and get them. So, of course, to a certain degree, we've been made to believe that we are our own enemies. I now want us to change that narrative. And as I put a comment there earlier on, the Bible, whether we are believers or not, in fact, let's just imagine none of us on this platform is a Christian. Let's just take the Bible as an ordinary self-help book, a book that can help you to develop yourself. Clearly, in the book of 1 Corinthians, it is defined how we can begin to love ourselves. And before the list is given to us, we are also told exactly the things that we do that will prevent us from loving ourselves. If you envy your neighbor, you cannot love them. If you're jealous of your neighbor, you cannot love them. If you're covetous, you cannot love your neighbor. The list is given. If you're angry, you cannot love your neighbor. But love is kind. Love is patient. Love does not boast. Love will support you. Love will help you. Love will bring you. Love will push you. Love will bring you to be your best. It will push you to be the best person that you can ever be. That is what we must begin to do. I think we are focusing too much on our flaws. We know our flaws. Let's begin to rather push our successes. There are many Black people who have achieved greatness and success. Let's tell more of those stories. I think just before I go, another chunk of our history that we keep leaving out of the conversation is the history pre-slavery. Before slavery, let us not forget that it was Black people who built the pyramids. We often tend not to talk about that. We don't talk about pre-slavery. We normally always start the conversation from slavery. Let us talk about our successes. Way before technology, way before advancement, Black people on the continent of Africa were able to build pyramids. we were able to build them to its, the specificity. Those pyramids are still standing till today. They are still there. They're still standing. Those were some of the achievements of Black people pre-slavery, pre-colonialism. Let us focus on those.
Thank you, Maria.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So that we can have a very well-balanced, holistic.
Definitely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes.
So we'll just let you have your comments and then.
Let me correct the impressions if she's heard me right. And I'm saying that racism is not only a Black race. Racism, as she said, that we have to tackle holistic the issue of racism. And I'm saying that there had been and there's still 5 white race. The white race, Black race, Indian race, the Hawaiian, Papua, those are the race, and the Asian race, they are 5. So we're tackling the issue of racism as she put it in the bigger context. The movement, I've never spoken about the movement. Neither have I said that the movement should not go on. We've had such movements and we are having it all over the world. Activism is all over the world. I don't want, and I will still remain to say that if a Black Moroccan, white Moroccan is against me, a Black, it is not an issue of a white man. And saying that we should tackle the issue of racism, I've told you and you are aware that the people demonstrating side by side today, if you put it in terms of numbers, is not a Black. They are not Blacks. I'm sorry, they are not. I'm yet to see that kind of a demonstration that we put out there in Ghana. Have we done that? I haven't seen that bigger size as it was in Ireland. I haven't seen that as it was in Germany. I haven't seen that as it was in Denmark. I haven't seen that as it was in Australia. So we keep on that we have to change. The bigger picture is racism. You cannot change the colors of the 5 entities that came and that were brought on earth. I said, and we are saying that we should also concentrate on our own. Yes, of course, we may tell history of the pyramid built, what we did and what they have also done. History does exist in any part of the world. You go to Adamawa province of Cameroon, they will tell you that is where Adam and Eve were born. Would you believe that side of the history? History exists. Makers of civilization, makers and then designers of history. You were not there, I wasn't there. So therefore, we are squaring it in today, something that will suit the gravity, something that will suit our destiny today. In marching forward, I will not, as you made mention of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi, yes, I've made mention. I'm saying that the system, the power that be, I wasn't and I've never been a president. Okay. And I'm still not a president. So there were presidents of 56. So if I'm mentioning that African neglected and rejected and let the man be killed, you do not say that, where was I when that was being perpetuated or when white man did that? I'm sorry. I didn't hear your voice also either. So we are all saying that.
Farooq, very quickly, before we continue, I have another sister of mine who is in the US. Sis, what comments do you have to say on this topic?
Well, first of all, thank you for contacting me, Dena, and this is a very important subject. I want to say Happy Father's Day to your guests.
Thank you.
But I also want to say, sir, I do not agree with most of what you were saying. I believe that your comments come mostly from text books and history that are taught in the schools and universities that leave out so much important information as to how we were brainwashed over here to hate one another and be jealous of one another. It's a system that they've used for centuries, divide and conquer. And because of their brutality and their hatred towards us, and the fear that they put in our ancestors, that is now generational in our DNA is the reason why it is so hard for us to unite. That's my comment.
Thank you so much, sis. Thank you.
Benta, I strongly also disagree my sister's position that we are being divided because of how we were brought up, we were brought the colonization, the slavery. I'm saying that in Europe today, we have the oldest ethnic background, the oldest ethnicity, the group, which is the Sigourners and the Gypsies. Until today, my sister, they don't have a country where they come from. Yet they live. They don't dwell much in the past. So if the system was put in place to divide us and hate each other, are we still going to still raise our hands in the air and still talking about this is how we were treated? And I'm saying that if we're talking about colonization, the Europeans, the white Europeans, did not only colonize African countries. They did not only colonize, or they did not only, the slave trade was not only black man. The slave trade, other whites were involved. Other Spaniards were involved. So I'm saying that other races have built themselves. They pull themselves together. Our race, it is the time. So if you talk about making a reference of generation, then I'm pointing it to you and all of us that the generation that we find ourselves in, we have the tool. We should start. Charity begins at home. Let us go back to our community. Let us show love to each other. Let us marry ourselves. Let us sing together. Let us dine together. Let us wine together. This is what we are not doing. It has nothing to do with colonizing.
I think we need to do more of, not necessarily what we're doing. We need to do more of. Now's the time that we need to be more.
We cannot be talking about history of 400 years. India went through a bad history of the centuries. Where was a black man? The Red Indians went through a bad century. Where was a black man? In American.
I know, but Farooq, like I said, we are concerned about more about our race. You know, yes.
So I think that's our race is what I'm saying. That it has come to a time when I made mention, which I first the lady who first talked about the Gaddafi thing. I'm saying that we haven't shown love enough, and that we have to begin and we have to do it. Not that some of us where we was. No, I wasn't. When I couldn't be in the position to speak against or not. If the presidents on the continent could not speak. So we should not only conscientize our mind when only that the racism is black. The racism exists even in a negative sense. Italy has racism, racial discrimination against themselves more than any other white race. In Europe, the Turkish and the Kurds, do you know how they hate themselves? Go to the Balkans, go to even the Arab republics, go to the Asians, how they hate themselves. They also went through colonization. So it is about how they were brought. Of course, Chinese were also brought in a brutal way by the Japanese. They got when? They were liberated in 1950s. We were also had independence in 1957. See where they are. So we cannot sit down. Chinese did not sit down. They are talking about what Japanese did to them in the 1945s. This, I will still strongly say that we haven't done enough to show the togetherness, the love. We don't preach love just.
This is the point I want. I don't want any of the. We know the negativity, but I want the positive things, like what we need to actually.
The positive impact.
I think we need to be spreading more of these things now, Farooq. My audience is one that wants to definitely learn the history, but also wants solutions. I want this platform to be used for solutions, togetherness, unifying each other. And I think that, you know, whether we like it or not, George Floyd has awoken us, has like brought us together. Usually, would you find something that's happened in America for, you know, protests all around the world? Like, it's triggered a lot of things. And I think that this is the time that we need to stand on that to unify us as Africans and, you know, to stop the tribalism, to stop all of that and, you know, allow ourselves to love each other. And I think the word love is very, very important in this context, because actually, when you think about it, we don't love each other enough. And so I think that's the way that we need to move forward. And I think we need to be educating our children as they grow to love one another. And, you know, you mentioned about in America, I think a white person, a young child, white child will go and sleep at a black person's house and vice versa, right?
But we don't do that to ourselves.
We're not doing that, and that's, I guess those are the solutions. Let's start doing that. Let's let an Ewe person go and sleep at an Ashanti person's house. Let's mix each other up. These are the points that I want us to come out with. Not people negative. So I think that those are important points that you've made. You know, very, very valid. And I think that that's what we need to start doing. Allowing our children to experience other cultures. Go to the northern region. How many of us, even in Ashanti, to the northern region, we haven't been there, vice versa. And I think that's when we're going to start loving each other and moving on as a community.
Plus, couple with the fact that we always feel when we are at fault or when we have problems, we look out to and then do the blame game. And I'm saying that with me and what I'm always preaching, we should stop the blame game. You cannot reverse the entry of any history. No, it's just not possible. You can't reverse the entry of what happened in the Holy Quran when even religion was propagated, when even Christianity. You can't go back and reverse it. You can only move ahead. And moving ahead means what? It means that what we haven't done, and if we are to do, it should not be only a talk show. As for activism, sitting on platform, granting interviews, etc., we can do it on daily basis. Does it solve the solutions? Completely not. Let's see how Dena will walk into the restaurant of a Ghanaian in UK to go and buy food. Let's see how I will go and do the other way around. As the Indians and other tribes are doing other race, they are doing to themselves.
Yeah.
Look, Lebanese comes to Ghana, goes to Cote d'Ivoire, goes to Sierra Leone, everywhere with one bag. At the end of the day, their brother who has already survived will give them a helping hand. So in Ghana, what is the minority, the size of Lebanese? They are not up to 10,000. They are not up to 5,000. Lebanese in West Africa, what is their size? Look at their wealth. Are they the people who colonize us? So if you sit back and say that Lebanese, they didn't colonize us. The British that colonized you is gone. They came to struggle like you and I. But I've decided that I like to eat only from Lebanese restaurant because Ghanaian restaurant, I will not go and give the person money. What are we talking about activism here? What are we talking about? What? We should not redefine the racism is a race. Nobody can change Indian race and all be blacks. Nobody can change white race. White race is already white race. Black race is black race. Indian is racism. I've given a note that, Ms. Denta, we have black Africans descent, like the African Americans that we are crying for. All of us are crying today. The activism that we are propagating today, that black man's life matters. We have black men in West Papua, 2.5 million Africans, typical like you and I, bearing Ghanaian names, bearing Togolese names, bearing Sierra Leonean names, are being subjected into what? Into slavery till today in the 21st century. How many Africans have gone to their aid? How many blacks, both African American, African, or wherever that we are in this part of the world? Tell me how many Caribbeans have raised their voice to support the West Papua. You cannot, the white race maybe will not allow. The Indians may not allow. The Chinese will not allow. We allow. So the issue and the fight and the contest here is not about a contest of raising our voices only as what? A political activism against a certain political ideology. The white men have done this, the white men have done that. Yes, they've done that. That is why history is there to guide us. But in the history guiding us, how far have we dealt with the history? How far have we helped ourselves? Last time, my sister didn't make mention when you quoted that what I said on Happy FM. I said, tell me one single African country on the continent of Africa since our independence 70 years ago, respectively, have given $1 to the fellow African country. Ms. Danta, can you get one? Has Ghana ever given $10,000 to Togo? Has Togo given money to Benin?
I can't say. I haven't done any research on that. I can't say, but
you will never get it anywhere. No country on West. But when you go to the Arabian Peninsula, when certain country is weak, Saudi Arabia is there to help, or Qatar is there to help. Much, they still have their differences. They not sit there and raise their hands on their heads of colonization and colonial histories. It is gone. In Europe, what is happening? You have lived in Europe, possibly you were born in Europe, Ms. Denta. How did you see, or how were you seeing Romanians in the 1990s, last 30 years? I'm sorry, they were the poorest. How were you seeing Polish? Europeans came together, formed a union, which our OAU is older than a European Union. Do you get it? OAU, Organization of African Union, is older than European Union. How have they put themselves together, embrace even their colonies, embrace their brothers and sisters who killed themselves like fowls in the Yugoslavian Republic, and embrace them and brought them to bear, and using the same currency, giving them the same passport, assisting them, helping them, being able to work here, being able to work there. Cross Ghana border to Togo. How do we treat ourselves? This is the matter we should also be beginning to talking about. We should not only sit down and preach about 400 years slavery, colonization. That is how they treated us. So we should kill ourselves. No. How do we? I've thrown an open challenge that give us the research. Let's get the data. How many Africans have managed to marry black?
We'll have to do more research on this and come back.
We don't. African Americans, we do not. How? We don't even get closer to our brothers and sisters. The same way they also do not get. So if you look at the marriage between Africans living in the United States, is between them and the whites are more than how does it happen like that? Those are the issues that, because if we're married to ourselves, the culture which you left 400 years ago that you didn't know, I will learn yours and you will learn mine. We bring it together. We live like the Jewish. So don't see Jewish, in my view, as because they are united, they go to the synagogue, they live in one area, one dominant, one food, etc. I will not deal with the issue with Jewish and Palestine. I cannot change the narrations and narratives.
Isn't someone like Ivory Coast still under France? There's a lot of African countries who are, even though the colonizers have left, they still control them.
That is what I'm saying, that we have brains. All the French, make a research, and I'm telling you, on diplomatic archives and files, every French president from Côte d'Ivoire today is the same family. They are the same people, all of them, from Abdou Diouf, Hofo Boigny, Kona Bédié, all of them across board, including Alassane Ouattara. At a point, they were all deputies in France. They were ministers in France, deputy ministers in France. They were lecturers in France. Laurent Gbagbo was a history lecturer in France. So then bred them. They haven't tried to change it. Why don't they go and do that? Wasn't British?
I think obviously France is bigger than Ivory Coast. They have a lot of power.
Yes, they have a lot of power, but is UK bigger than Qatar, or Qatar is bigger than UK? Why don't they go there and instruct them? Can UK go and instruct the Emirates? They colonized them in 1971. They colonized you in 1957. Why are they not going to do that? Because the Emirati will not steal his money and put in London. The Ghanaian will steal your money and put in London. So they will protect you. And they know that you don't have any use for your independence. These are the realities. So we should not look at the context of only activism, racism, and then also history. History is there to guide all of us. But out of history, we learn. I'm asking, how far and how best have we learned out of our history? This is the subject I want us to treat. We should learn out of our history and change, not to count on the past of the history. The history is there to guide you.
We're going to have to do a part 2 of this with Farooq, because we've run out of time. I mean, it's been very, very educative. Farooq, thank you so much for joining us on the show. But lastly, how are you using your role in diplomacy to change the narrative?
Let me just quick to say that 2019, last year, in Switzerland at the General Assembly, there was a program which I attended. And then that particular program, I was a political diplomatic advisor on that. There were presence of Indian governors. The Grand Monk of Cambodia came. President from Croatia, president from Montenegro, and then president from also, I think, Serbia, Montenegro. There were 5 presidents who were there. I had an interaction with them. The question they asked, what is wrong with your country, Africa, your continent, Africa? Look at this. We have a history, we have a background, we have a bad war in Europe in the 1990s, just 30 years ago. But we've managed to resolve our differences. We all now meet on what? On one table as a unified entity, as Europeans, being part of the union. Why is it that Africa, we are still fighting? I'm yet to see when a white man with guns and roses with military uniform descended on the continent of Africa. But if you allow yourself, that is why you have brain, for him to call you and tell you, go and severe your people, the cocoa that you came to sell, keep the money here and go and starve your people. Then you come back to come and borrow the money and go, making it a debt on the shoulder and on the neck of your generation unborn. You tell the white man he's a supremacist or you are a fool. We are sometimes, that is the way. So I'm saying that some of us, we try any opportunity that we get. Before we'll be able to change our lifestyle, we must be prepared to admit. This is where some of us, we don't want to hear. To admit the truth and to also to admit our flaws. Because at the end of the day, our flaws, other continents, other countries, we are not the only continent that have gone through colonization. We are not the only continent that has color. Other continents have color. They've gone through colonization. They have built their own. Their citizens are happy. We should sit down, not to still be talking about being colonized and being enslaved, and then also other forms. Their supremacy, Yes, supremacy exists. Today, Saudi Arabia kingdom, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they are not even the Arabs. But still, they are there. It's also supremacy. But how well do you hear about that history? It is quiet. We see the country as a successful country. We need, and all of us, not me, we should begin to reorientate, put ourselves together. Let's go back to our neighborhood. Let us start to eat together. Let us do everything together. Let us move together. The only platform on the table, television screens, which will be talked back, at the end of the day, no practicality, it will be a history that we still have to recall. But the generation is offered to begin with us. So all of us, not charge me that what have you used, what have you done? Yes, we may not know what I've done, but then indeed, some of us, we're also doing. The diaspora mission, let them tell you, Romanians are diasporans. I took the mission to Romania. You do not know what we did there. Some of us are helping. King Albert of Monaco in France, he's a diasporan. King Albert of Monaco is a diasporan. Are you aware of that? And he's the king of Monaco.
Yeah.
They've not raised their hands in the air, talking about how they were colonized by the French. He is a diasporan. And it's one of the richest countries within Middle Europe. They are diasporans. They haven't cried over the history of Europe.
So the diasporans have a large role to play in all this.
Yes, because look, let me give an example before we go. Our brothers and sisters are Black African Americans. Good number of them, you may not be following, but some of us, we do know. If you go to Poland, our Black American film actors, our Black American media actresses, all these big people, you will see them, what do they do? Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Russia, Poland. These are the places they go and do what? Assistance support services. How many Russians will come to African village and do donations to an orphanage? But orphanage across. Let's see how best. I'm not tasking them because we did not find their monies for them. But how well do we connect? We don't. When we have money, we still go and give to the same whites. So when you turn around tomorrow that they are racist, then it is our own fault to some extent. Because if you want to show love, you have Kenya, you have Namibia, you have Uganda, you have Gambia, you have other countries, Tanzania, where you see people in utmost poverty. In my country, Ghana, not in exclusion. Nigeria, not in exclusion. But what do? When we have, as African American or Africans, rather to Europe, rather to America, they don't. They take it to European country. So where is the love that we are showing each other that we cannot? I'm sorry. I'm here to see quote unquote, a very popular, I can count 2 or 3. Our sisters from United States should tell us how many of our popular celebrities in the United States have married African. There might be some, but how many of them? As against to how many of them are married to whites? So what do we want? We always want to change the position, switch it here. And I'm saying that if nothing at all, no country, a white race, have married Africans, black, than Germany. And yet we keep saying that they are Nazis, they are racist, because we don't want, we choose and pick which one favors us. It is not like that. We need to change our life. We need to forward, to focus, love each other. A Kenyan should not see somebody, a Ghanaian in the street of London and run away, especially London, the entire London. You do Western there, over there. Tell me the unity among Africans in London, and then we can deal with the subject. Let us see them on the street. How far did they demonstrate? We sit in our homes on television.
There was a lot of Africans that went out to protest. Even Maria was there. There was a lot of
yeah, because black man's life matters. Are you getting me? That is true. Now let us, black man life matters. You understand me? Because a black man should not be seeing his fellow black man on the street of London as what? A killing bird. Not in Holland, not in France, in Paris. The blacks in Paris, Senegalese kids, Cameroonian kids, Ivorian kids, Ghanaian kids, look at what they did to themselves as compared to how the others also treat themselves. We, to some extent, we are enemies of ourselves until we are prepared.
Yeah, you agree with the title, we are our own worst enemy.
Yes, that will be my final conclusion, that we are enemies unless we change. No white man will come and change it for you. History is far too gone. That we have our countries, we have our independence, we have our continent. Nobody has changed the continent. The names of our countries, about 35 to 37% of them, we change it all. Zimbabwe changed their name. Burkina Faso changed their name.
What about African free trade? We've now come together as Africans to do the African Free Trade Agreement. Yes. It's a positive step.
It is a positive step, but much has to be done. Let's see if that trade agreement will work. Let's start with our borders. Don't go to look into the bigger picture.
We have to make it work. And that's the thing about it, because it's a positive thing. It's taken many years for all of those countries to sign. And for once, it has happened. And so we need to think positive, and all of us need to make sure that it does work. It has to work.
It has to work. The African Caribbean Pacific Summit that took place in Kenya on the 2nd up to 11th of December 2019. I was enlisted, and I believe some of my ambassadors from Vanuatu are listening to this program, or they are watching. I was enlisted as a Vanuatu government delegation member. This African trade agreement, yes. But beyond that, tell me, how many declarations, how many resolutions are there that Africa has not touched it? That one too, is that a white man that told us not to do it? We need to do more. Let's show love as other race have done to
that, you know, Oprah Winfrey has set up a school in South Africa that we know, and she's helping.
Beautiful. We need to see more. Let us come.
There's a lot more that we don't know about.
Yes.
Do support.
Let us do more of that. And when they see us united like the Indians have done, like the Asians have done, like the other tribes, other race have done, they begin also to respect. And we'll have one voice, one identity, one speech, one language. Then we can face. Because every generation, every race, they are taking care of themselves. We must not be left out and still be crying that see them going and we are sitting back and so, no, that's without strongly, I disagree. We are generally, greatly our own worst enemies. Let us not look at one component or individual cases that happen to us. If a Nazis or if a race, the same Nazis do the same thing to the Turkish. They do the same thing to Irish. They do the same thing. Even the United Kingdom, German whites against British whites, there is enemy. You know it.
Farooq, we have to wrap up, but thank you so much for imparting so much knowledge for us this evening. I'm going to take you off now and say thank you so much. We're definitely going to have you back on the show to do more topics and more education. But for me, it's all about the positive things that we can get out of this. And I think you've said a lot of things that we will take out of the conversation and not just the negative things. So thank you so much, Farooq. God bless you. And I will see you soon on the other side. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed the topic. So I want you to write. I want everybody to write on the screen if you agree. Are we our own worst enemies? Say yes or no. I want to know from you. Are we have so many people watching online right now. So many questions for Mr. Farooq. I want to hear from you guys. Just type yes or no. Are we our own worst enemies? Some are saying yes, no way. Some says yes, we are. I agree. I want to hear from you guys. Are we our own worst enemy? And if we are, if the answer is yes, then we need to change that. This show is here, yes, to educate you, but it's also here to empower you and to make that change. We need to, if it's a yes, we need to make that change. We need to be unified more. We need to be working together more. We need to be bringing our brothers and sisters up in positions where change can be affected. And so, guys, like he said, listen, even in Ghana, there's so many tribalism. How do we get Ewes and Ashanti to love each other? How do we get the northern region to love Ashantis? We need to be making sure that there is love between us. And it starts with love. And as we know, everything starts from the home. We must educate our children. We must educate our families and spread the word of love. How many times have you purchased something from your brother or sister who is African or Black? How many times? This is the time that we need to unite. So I hope that you've enjoyed the show. I hope that you will spread the word. And I hope that you've taken something from this. Remember, everybody has their views, but please make sure that you are picking the positive things and running with it. No more excuses, no more talk that will say we'll support our own and that we don't. Let's start doing things. We should not be our own worst enemies. We should not. It shouldn't be happening in this day. So I'll leave you with this, guys. We must love each other. We must work together. Yes, we must learn from the past to enable us to move to the future. Like I said, if you're watching us for the first time, please make sure that you subscribe to ODANA Network. We also have a platform that you can subscribe to if you're looking at investment opportunities. I'll send you the link right now. And if you are abroad and you haven't used Tap, make sure that you go on, download that and send money to a loved one. Remember, us in the diaspora, we send more money to Africa than we get for aid. And so we must make sure that you are sending and supporting loved ones back home. Guys, let's support each other. We are more powerful together as a community. Like Farooq said, it takes us to be united. What are you doing to support another person? This is the question that we must ask ourselves. Again, thank you so much for listening live on the Dena Show. I will be on next week, Thursday, 8 p.m. With another topic. We're going to be talking to the UN. There's some UN refugees that are going to be on the show. And then the following week, we're going to be talking about leadership and governance on Sunday. Thank you so much for watching the show. I must say a big thank you to my Dena Show team, Christine Ade, who's at the back doing all the work. And we have Pearl, we have Cassie, and we have Naomi. Team, thank you so much for supporting and putting on the Dena Show. Must again say thank you to Vesta London Beauty for her lip gloss. Make sure that you go and purchase one. And also to Cassie's Classics for her amazing shito and jollof seasoning. Thank you so much for all of you for watching. Make sure that you spread the page. Thank you so much. God bless, and see you same time next week. Bye-bye.